Good evening, everyone. A confirmation about the audio, please. If the audio is clear and available, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. We shall be starting in a couple of moments. I'm doing good. Anurag, thank you. And okay, see, so 15 minutes break for Chandrayaan is something that is not warranted for. I'll try to give a 5 minutes break if possible at that point of time. Um, you can follow that. Then we will have another break at later point of time. Okay. Okay. So before we continue, any persisting doubts that you have with regards to the subject of geography, any particular portions that you are facing very hard to get a grasp of? Because now we are in the final laps of this entire session of geography. So rather than concentrating upon the individual portions, any larger doubts that you have faced, any kind of difficulties that you have faced, please feel free to raise that up. Okay, we'll try to get a solution to that. It is hard to remember which tributaries is above which one and all the state that it covers. So it will come only with a multiple repetition. This is something, be it of soil types, be it of the types of forests, be it the types of crops, the even when we talk about the regions which are having a good deposit of certain minerals, rivers and tributaries, that is very factual and that will come after substantial amount of repetition. That is the only way out of it. Shelja, how to put all the things in mind by revising, my dear friend. If there would have been a shortcut, then the problem would not have been faced by any candidate. But every candidate faces this issue. So the more you repeat it, the more you revise it, after some time, you will find them to be on the tip of your tongue. But it is up to you to be able to revise. Okay. Sadhana, reason for Western Ghats more continuous is because, as compared to Eastern Ghats, they have been created much later, and that is why the amount of the erosion, degradation, or weathering that is experienced is significantly lesser. Okay. And why it is more elevated? Yesterday we had talked about it that after those deposits of lava happened in the region of the Deccan Traps, now the land became so very hard that further lava could not break through the surface, but nonetheless, it ended up increasing the height. And okay, is it necessary to make notes? This is again one of the very persistent questions. So here, see, note making is your prerogative. And understand the reason for note making, then you will get an automatic answer. Note making helps you revise in a very short span of time. For example, I'll give you a situation. For example, let's suppose tomorrow is the prelims examination, and today you are supposed to revise everything, or 3 days prior to the prelims you are supposed to revise everything. Now if you start opening up the books and then start revising, then the entire day will be consumed by only one of the subject, and that too only one of the books. So that is why, in order to aid your process of revision, that is why the notes are there. So what should the notes contain? Note should contain only the important pointers, all the important pointers that you find. So here, always advisable never to make notes in your first reading, at least the notes which are you are going to use for revision. Never use those notes or make those notes after the first reading. Because what happens, and you would attest to the fact that when you read something for the first time, each and every sentence appears to be very important, and you get a feeling that this will definitely be asked in the examination. So even when you underline the things, you will find candidates are underlining each and every sentence of the page, rendering the entire page unutilizable after that. So when you carry out your revision process, always advisable to take down the notes at that point of time. Read a particular area, write it down in your own words, only the important pointers. Again, cross check with the content, anything missed out, add that, and that will form your concise notes. Very important even in the mains examination. Okay. And how many hours per day you have to study? So that is not something which I would basically prescribe out for you, because many of the candidates I know, they are in a habit of studying 12, 13 hours a day, but the productive time is only around 4 to 5 hours. Roughly, just ensure that the productive output of your self study, if it is in the range of 5 to 6 hours, roughly around that, fair enough. So that is more than sufficient. But more important than that is to ensure that you are basically very, very disciplined and regular, that every day you are following this process. Okay. And I have facts, know, and understanding of the topics too, but still I can't go for good answer writing. So, Aru Dikshit, what I would suggest to you is do one thing: go for rather than answer writing, pick any topic which you have read, which you have understood, write it down in your own words about that topic. Write down everything that you know about that topic. Once that ability to write comes, and that will come after some time, then answer writing is just a byproduct of that. Okay. The section of tectonic plates. Okay. So we will try to arrange a separate doubt clearing session, guys. And for everyone facing any kind of doubts, we will have that doubt clearing sessions. One doubt clearing session, and there in the entirety of. So we are trying to arrange for that. So accordingly, you will be intimated or intimidated, and accordingly, you will get the proper notification for that, and there you can ask any kind of doubts that you have. Why Narmada and Son river flow in opposite direction? Because of the slope. The slope, see, Son flows in the northward because that forms the end portion of the peninsular plateau. That is why it follows the slope, joins river Ganga. Whereas Narmada, there is a rift valley which exists between Vindhyas and Satpura. That is where the Narmada goes through. And is there any loss if no notes are made during live class? So, Yashi, many of the times during live classes, we hold certain discussions which are not necessarily present in the text of the PPT. So, advisable now that the sessions have ended or almost are about to end. So, basically, what I would suggest to you, when you carry out your first process of revision in the final session, I will also give you a pathway of how to revise, of how to get a grasp of this particular subject, which is tough. This subject is not one of the easiest subjects out there. It is tough. You will not find many candidates telling you that geography is something which is very easy. So there you will when you revise that, then you try to take up notes. Okay. And heavy factual portion from Indian geography for prelims is a concern. Vibhu, that is what I told you yesterday, that please don't chase the factual questions out there. If there are factual questions, fair enough. Every year there are going to be factual questions. Read those facts on a daily basis, anything that you encounter upon, but don't chase those facts. That today, this month, I will learn only the facts. Then you are not doing anything productive. It is the basic question which will stump you out. Okay. Rashida, in that case, take the weekends for the optional. Right. And Kavana, yes, absolutely. Is there any portion that you get a feeling after the entirety of those 24, 25 modules where you still have no clue? Please let me know. Okay. And Good to know that you don't have fear of geography anymore. I'm going to attempt to, in 2023, do I start current affairs now? Absolutely, yes. Okay. Optional and GS, they should be, the time should be distributed every day. You should, if you are a full-time aspirant, you should focus on giving or devoting time to two GS subjects and maybe 1 hour for optional. Weekends are where you can double down on the optional and the magazine portion. Okay. Good to know, Anurag. Okay. So, Sajan, shall I print out your lectures and ARM? I did not know that my lectures could be printed out as well. But the annotations, if you want to print out, you can. But save paper, not very much required. Is IAS and PCS syllabus the same? PCS is a bit easier if you have prepared up till the level of civil services. Then in PCS, you need certain areas of mastery which you need to gain, and certain areas which you need to, for example, certain very factual portions that you need to devote yourself to. And that is, PCS is only the game for prelims. If you get through prelims, you will easily get through the mains if your level of preparation is up to the civil services. Okay. 12 to 18 months of current affairs. Why Western plains are broader than Eastern plains? Yesterday also, Benika, I think you asked the same question. And yesterday also I told you, the Western plains, oh, are you talking about the northern part of the country? So if that is what you are talking about, that in northern part of the country, in the northern plains, why is it that the western part is broader? That is owing to the shape of the Peninsula Plateau. If you observe in the eastern part, it is the Rajmahal Hills and the Chota Nagpur Plateau which has compressed significantly. And that is why the plain region has got slightly more compressed. Should I take geography as my optional? Geography is one of those optional subjects which gives you the opportunity to score more than 300 in the optional, provided there are certain conditionals. Guys, many of you had been asking this question for me from me continuously, so I'll take a couple of minutes of your time to tell you about it. Geography as an optional will be rewarding if the physical portion of geography, that is the physical geography, is ingrained, if the conceptual clarity in physical geography is there, then geography is something that you are able to visualize. You have to be able to paint the larger picture. For example, let's suppose we talk about an area of our country. Let's suppose we talk about the northwestern part of the country, Punjab, Haryana. Now, all of us are aware that there is a significant amount of social distress. Every few years, every few months, you have a significant amount of protests which keep on arising. Now, on the face of it, you might think about it to be some kind of a social issue, but it has got a significant linkage to geography itself. So, how? So, let me give you a kind of a brief preview. The region of northwestern part of India, that is Punjab and Haryana, they experience rainfall for the shortest duration. So, there, the amount of soil moisture is very less, and they grow the kind of crops which require heavy amount of soil moisture. So, they go for an over irrigation of sorts in order to overbalance it. So the soil is turning infertile, so the productivity is reducing, and they are growing the same kind of crops year after year. So what happens is that the income level keeps on laying stagnant, while the income of, let's say, the labor class, the income of the worker class, the salaried section keeps on increasing, but the farm income keeps on getting stagnant, which increases the divide in the society. So that gives rise to significant amount of insecurities and dissatisfaction, and that is where you have very frequent social unrest there. So your ability to paint a larger picture about how the geographical entity in a region can impact the cultural milieu of an area. For example, think about certain examples such as, why is it that Europeans have did come to India, right? Think about that particular portion. Why is it that Europeans came to India? Let me see if we are aware of about that. Which rank we want to take IAS? Double digit. Very good. It is because of very simple aspect, that is spices. The availability of spices. Now, why did they want spices? Is it because they did not like their food anymore and they wanted our spices? No, because those spices were utilized in those nations as a preservative. Spices are the best preservative, including pepper. And those spices, they are used to cover meat, and that meat can be stored significantly without decomposition for a longer period of time. And in the northern part of the European nations, you will find that there is a significant amount of a very harsh winter condition, due to which the agricultural productivity is not there. So that is why you can't keep on killing animals and slaughtering animals even during the winter. So that is where they need to preserve food. And where do they get those spices from and that continuous supply of food and all these crops from? From the tropical countries. That is why they came to India. So the moment you are able to interrelate it, it will be very rewarding for you as to take geography optional. But if you are taking geography optional thinking about it that only the portion of physical geography is going to be there and we are going to have a hunky dory time, no, it is also going to have many of the theoretical portions. So on an average, people are able to score 260 to 70. If you do good, you have the scope to score around 230 plus as well, 330 plus as well. But please understand, any optional that you choose, be it geography, anthropology, history, any optional that you choose, you have to ensure that your name figures out in top 20 of that optional across the country. Only then will you find your name etched in the top 100, top 200. Okay, otherwise, any optional that you choose, if you are choosing the optional that everybody gets more than 300, everybody gets more than 280, that is not the case. You have to work significantly harder. So when you are choosing the optional, first of all, take a look at the table of content provided in the notification. Look at it deeply. Try to think about it, which is the optional that you can study on your own as well. If push comes to shove, let's suppose you are not able to succeed in the first attempt, then the other portion is that will you have the motivation to carry on further? So which optional provides you with that motivation to help you read further? That optional, along with obviously the scoreability, the availability of guidance material, that is everything which is supplementary. Okay. And right, what mistakes are done by you during preparation? A lot of them. I'm also a simple human like you. So basically, before clearing the uh, state services, before that, it was again the same aspect of the getting demotivated by the results, the type of questions. So if sometime time permits, I will be very happy to discuss with you that what are the mistakes which led me to repeat those particular areas. For example, over stress on a particular subject. Now, overtly stressing upon a particular subject is not something which UPSC rewards you. And then also, I would sometime like to share you what were those areas which helped me succeed in certain examinations and certain examinations that I did manage to clear. So I would sometime, if the time allows us. Okay. And can language be chosen as an optional? Absolutely, yes. Sakshi, difference between sequent and insequent. Sequent is the one which appears to follow the slope of the land, and insequent is the one which appears to oppose the slope of the land. It does not exactly move from a lower elevation to a higher elevation, but it gives you the appearance as if it is opposing. Okay. Possible impact of the Fukushima plant release of radioactive water. So it is not going to impact the ocean current, but it will impact the stratification of water. Maybe in the portion of environment, if we get the chance to interact again, Yuvraj, so there we will talk about it. Okay. And you have cleared state PCS examination. Yes, my dear friend, I have. And is it said that the medium plays a great role in clearing the examination? No, it is about the how confident you are in that medium, the availability of resources. That is it. While attending the classes, most of the concept got understood. So try to revise it immediately. Okay. Right. My optional was geography itself. So that answers your question, Priyanshu. Shargun, my your question is not visible, my dear friend. And how superimposed oppose the slope of the land? Superimposed, basically, it does not oppose the exact slope, but the base rock and the parental rock, that is the igneous rock, their slope is defined. Okay. Ashe, nowadays I study geography itself. Please continue that. Once it is clear, please understand, once this is clear, then you will never find any difficulty. So, this is one of those subjects, if your concept is clear, you don't need the books at all. Okay. Management is a good optional as well. Does college matter, like IIT or other tier 1, etc.? Sometimes it does, but depends upon how confident you are, how confident you are about your educational background. Don't ever be ashamed about your educational background. If you go into the defensive mode, and it matters only in the time of interview, if you go into the defensive mode, that okay, I could not get through that IIT and hence I went into, let's say, NIT or this institute, they will hammer down upon you. So be very confident. I did this, I pursued my arts, I pursued this degree, I pursued the science degree because that is what I wanted to do. As simple as that. Okay, so this is getting diverted. Why you left the state PCS job? Because there are multiple reasons, my dear friend, but there was basically teaching is one of those passions that I've shared long before my preparation started. So if sometime the time allows, I'll get into it. Okay, we'll have that discussion. Write a mail to me. I'll be happy to have that discussion with you. Okay, and so can we come back now? So we come back to the portion of the river systems of India, and here river systems, basically, what do we have as what we discussed yesterday is basically that these river systems across the country, they are very, very vital for the provision of basic life. And we have seen in recent past as well that how when these rivers they go out of control, be it by excess amount of sedimentation or be it by various different processes, we have seen the kind of havoc that it can create, right? So here these river systems, and when we talk about the river systems of the country, there can be various different methodologies by which you can classify these river systems. One of the methodologies can be the fact that where is it that the water is draining. So here you can have the Bay of Bengal drainage. You also can have the Arabian Sea drainage. That is the rivers which drain into Bay of Bengal, the rivers which end up draining into the region of Arabian Sea. But this is not a very apt kind of definition or a classification. Because if you classify on the basis of where it ends up emptying the water, that means in the Arabian Sea drainage, you are putting river Indus, the mighty river Indus, which originates through the region of the Himalayas, in the region of the Trans Himalayas, crisscrosses the Himalayas by forming very deep gorges, and then flows forming a very large delta. You're equating it with a river like Tapi, which doesn't have the water supply from the snow melt. So that is not a good classification to say. But even if, let's suppose, you take that classification, then basically you can have the various water divides such as the Aravali, the Sayadris, or the Western Ghats, which will end up dividing. These are the water divides. Had the Aravali systems and the Delhi Ridge areas not have been in existence, even river Ganga would not have drained into Bay of Bengal. And there are multiple such theories provided by Koteshwaram and other such geographers. You don't need to go into the depth of it, who talk about the fact that how all these Indo-Brahm rivers, their directionality is shaped by this Aravali and further to the north by the Delhi Haridwar ridge. If that had not been in existence, it would not have formed a kind of a water divide. So river Ganga that you see here, why would it bend along with river Yamuna to the east? Wouldn't it simply flow towards the Arabian Sea. So these are water divides. But as I told you, these are not the perfect classifications in order to classify the river systems out there. So that is why the kind of classification which works is when you classify those particular rivers into the Himalayan based rivers as well as the peninsular rivers. So, Himalayan rivers, when you talk about it, so basically these are the river systems which originate from the mighty mountains of the Himalayas. And these are the river systems basically where you have the melting of the snow which feeds these rivers continuously. Whereas the peninsular rivers, they are not fed or they don't get water by the melting of the snow. The peninsular rivers get water due to excess amount of rainfall, let's suppose in a particular area, continuous amount of rainfall which occurs in those areas. So that ends up providing substantial amount of water into these peninsular rivers. Okay. And now in Kedarnath, two rivers meet. Hmm. I'll talk about Panch Prayag. It is river Mandakini, which originates close to Kedarnath, Vaibhav. It is not those rivers meeting. And what you might have seen if you have ventured into that area, you would have seen the meeting of the streams. So those are small streams which end up forming the river Mandakini. During the Kedarnath disaster, it was Mandakini which overflooded. Right. So I'll talk about all of those. Okay. And Chandrayaan 3 is going to land. I'll give you the 5 minutes break, okay? Don't worry about it. I'll give you the 5 minutes break at the time of Chandrayaan. Be it, we all hope, fingers crossed, that we have good news. So, in that, I'll give you 5 minutes of celebratory time. But otherwise, if let's suppose, God forbid, if there is a bad news, then we will try to restart with the class as soon as possible to take our minds off that kind of a disaster. Okay, I hope that works for everybody. So, uh, opinion about Chandrayaan 3 we'll talk about when we are not in the geography sessions. So, here, Indian drainage system may be divided on various bases. On the basis of discharge of water, it may be grouped into Arabian Sea drainage and the Bay of Bengal drainage. They are separated through each other from each other by the Delhi Ridge, the Aravalis, and the Sahyadris. On the basis of the mode of origin, nature, and characteristics, the Indian drainage can be classified into Himalayan drainage and the peninsular drainage. Here also you have certain problems. For example, let's suppose you consider River Chambal or River Son for that matter. Now, they don't get their water from the melting of ice and snow, but they end up meeting with the Ganga River system. So there is still a discrepancy here, but still it is much more accepted method of classification. So here, very basic kind of classification or very basic kind of characteristic when it comes to Himalayan drainage is the fact that in the case of Himalayan drainage, you have certain characteristics of all the rivers of the Himalayas. They all originate from a great height and they are continuously fed with lot of water by the melting of snow and ice. Okay. Now, when a river originates from a greater height, so as the river originates there, then basically what you will find is that there is a greater amount of force, there is a greater amount of velocity associated, and as a result of it, there is a greater amount of erosional activity which is carried out as well. Okay, there's a greater amount of erosional activity, weathering activity, so you will find very deep valleys to be created there, very deep valleys. Now, gorges, etc., these are plunge pools, these are very prominent features. Now, after that, the Himalayan rivers, they enter into the area which is referred to as the plains, the alluvial plains that we have. Now, if you apply your general logic, in the case of the alluvial plains, do you think it is easy for the river to meander? Absolutely yes. So there the rivers will be able to meander. They will be able to form long meanders and very large oxbow lake systems as well. And then eventually they have carried so much amount of sediments that they will be forming very distinctive deltaic formation as well. Okay. Now, that is basically the basic properties that you will attest with all the Himalayan rivers. But Certain Himalayan rivers, such as River Kosi, which is also referred to as the sorrow of Bihar, and rightfully so. River Kosi and such rivers, they are notorious for the incessant amount of shifting which is carried out. Okay, so that incessant amount of shifting which is carried out, so that is where you have this characteristic observed only in the Himalayan rivers, where the Himalayan rivers, they continue to shift their courses. So why is it that the Himalayan rivers, they shift their course, and what do we mean by shifting the course? So understand this. First of all, I want you to observe the image before anything. So this image that you see is that of River Kosi. Okay, that is River Kosi. Here you would have observed this particular one. You would observe that this is the path that the river would adopt in 1731. This is where 200 years later almost, the river is following this particular path. So the river can shift. Now, imagine a circumstance. Those of you belonging from this area would always attest to the fact and would be readily aware of this fact. But imagine a circumstance where you are living and you are settled in an area, and suddenly, one fine morning that you wake up, you observe the full might of the river coming through the settlement. Everything is taken away, everything is drained away. That is the havoc that River Kosi can create. And that is why, whenever River Kosi shifts its path, it is a kind of a national disaster, right? So even during the 2009 2010 floods, you had a kind of a disaster of this proportion where the River Kosi suddenly shifted its path. So why does a river shift its path, and what is the process of that? So here, understand this. Basically, you have you would have to observe here that in these areas there is not significantly greater amount of variation. Variation for 100 kilometers or more is observed in these areas. So why does that happen? So yes, good, that is a correct answer. So here, let us talk about it. Okay, so here, if you talk about it, let's suppose you have the floodplains. Somewhat like this. This is the channel of the river where the river water will flow, and these are your floodplains. So this is where the river water continues to flow. And furthermore, let's suppose here you have obviously the habitations which are out there, the various different habitations which are out there, right? Farmlands, croplands, settlements, villages, everything. Because when you settle down in an area, yes, there is always a tendency to settle in an upland portion, but that is not always a prerequisite or always a predominant requirement, is it? So here, let's suppose now, as the river ends up flowing, the river will carry significant amount of deposit, silt, right? Now, some of that silt will be deposited here as khadar, but substantial amount of silt will be deposited in the river channel itself. Now, every day, every year, now when is it that the river will carry more silt? If you think about it very logically, when is it that the river channel starts to carry more silt? It is always during the rainy season, because during the rainy season the availability of water is much more. So when the water comes down the slopes with a kind of a significant velocity, with a high speed, it will, and more water when it comes down, it will bring more silt and sediment with it. So every rainy season, it will bring sediment and silt. It will keep on. That is why during the rainy season, if you take a look at the rivers, they will give you the brownish appearance, right? During the month of December, January, if you take a look at the rivers, they will give you a kind of a bluish and greenish appearance, very clear water. But in the case of the rainy season, they will always give you the brownish appearance because it is carrying a lot of silt. Now, a lot of that silt is going to get deposited. Year after year, it gets deposited here. Now, as this gets deposited here, you will observe the fact that the available volume for the silt to, or for the water to move, that available volume keeps on getting reduced. Okay, for the water to move, the available volume keeps on reducing. So that means earlier water had a greater volume to move in, but now water doesn't have that volume to move in. It's restricted. So it will be restricted at these areas itself. These are plain areas. So what will the water do? Water will choose another low-lying area if possible. It will choose another low-lying area if possible. It will start moving from, let's suppose, here. It will start moving, let's suppose, from here. And as it moves from there, water has, in a way, decided its new path. Water has basically started moving on a new path. So there, it will carry out a vertical erosion as well, isn't it? There you will find that the water channel then starts deepening. And slowly, this becomes the new flow for the water and the path of the water. This becomes a newer area from which the water can flow. So that is basically where you observe the shifting of the river, where the entire river system in itself finds to shift. Now think about it. Can this be possible as a feature in the case of the peninsular rivers? Can this feature be possible in the peninsular rivers? What do you think? Perfect. It is not possible in the peninsular rivers. And the reason being very simple, because the peninsular rivers are composed of very hard basal rocks, very hard rocks. Okay, so that is why you will not find the kind of shift, sudden shift associated. Okay, so there the rivers, they have in a way made their own channel of flow after a long period of time of continuous erosion in those hard rocks. So for them to meander, to change their direction, to shift, it is simply not possible. So that is why this is a feature observed only in the Himalayan rivers. I hope that is understood. Okay, and why this will not happen with other Himalayan rivers? That happens with some other Himalayan rivers as well, but the shifting is not very prominent. In the case of many of the rivers, the shifting is not very prominent. Okay, but did it get shifted in the eastern part? And did it get shifted in the eastern part? Which eastern part? Is river capture and river shifting same phenomena? No. River capture is where you will observe that a tributary or a particular aspect is then captured by another river. Due to the flow and the process of erosion, it is captured. So the flow in itself changes. So shifting is something different. Okay. Kali River also, yes. Okay. Now, what can be done to deal with this? So to deal with the shifting, very simple. Apply the logic here also. Why has the shifting happened? Because of excessive amount of sedimentation, excessive amount of siltation which has happened. That is why the shifting has happened, isn't it? So if that excessive siltation is removed, excessive amount of silt and sediment that is removed by the process of dredging. Dredging is what? You would have heard about the term dredging. Dredging. Dredging is what? In the case of dredging, you dig out with the help of the barges or a kind of a stationary platform on the river, you can dig out all the silt and the sediment, you can remove it out of water. So there you can go for deepening of the channel. Okay, so that can be significantly done. Now, another property that you associate with the floods or with the Himalayan drainage is the occurrence of very frequent floods. Year after year, lots of lives are lost because of recurrence of floods. And it is nothing but a kind of a huge shortfall on our part, on the part of our administration, on the part of our decision making, that even in this modern era, now floods are very common across the world, floods do happen, but every other year in the same region the floods keep on happening. There can be multiple things which can be done to stop the process, but every year we lose very precious lives. And you can never understand that pain of losing your family member if you are not there yourself. Otherwise, these are just figures appearing in the news that in Himachal Pradesh, 35 people lost their life. In Uttarakhand, 7 people lost their life. So it starts appearing just like numbers. But the pain, the loss of life, the loss of property, the loss of livelihood, the loss of everything that you own, that is something which is very difficult to overcome. So that is why floods in Himalayan drainage is a phenomena we need to understand. So why do they happen? Mostly, you will observe this to be happening in the region of or at the time of the rainy season. So what happens actually? So if you consider, let's suppose, the mountain, right? And here, during the rainy season, what will you have? During the rainy season, there will be substantial amount of rainfall. Substantial amount of rainfall. Now, what will that rainfall do? That rainfall will increase the flow of the water. Okay, whatever is the flow associated, that will be substantially increased. Now, if the flow of the water increases, as we have discussed already, let's suppose the flow of water increases, then what happens? Its momentum will increase, right? Its ability to carry the amount of materials along with it, that will also increase. So with the increased flow, with increased flow, it will carry more materials, isn't it? It will be able to carry much more amount of materials along with that. Now, as it carries more amount of materials, what will it lead to? Deposition in the river channel. In river channel. Okay. So when you have the deposition in the river channel, let's assume we consider the plain areas. Now, this is your portion of the floodplains. This is the portion that we consider as the floodplains. Now, here, if you have the water which is present of the river, let's suppose you have settlement far away, many kilometers away from the plains, you have the settlement which is there, croplands, farmlands, everything exists. Now, slowly and steadily, in the river channel, as it starts getting deposited, again the same logic. So, when you have deposition of silt, that means lesser availability of volume for the water to flow, more lesser volume available for the water to flow. So, as a consequence, what will you observe? you will observe that the river simply overflows. The river will simply overflow. It will end up flooding large areas, and large areas will get devastated. Large areas, thereby, they start getting impacted. So that is why you have the frequent occurrence of floods that you observe, that you encounter. Now, here we have taken a look at the reasons, or if I have to summarize the reasons, first of all, the reasons, we are comfortable with this font size, everybody. I don't want the discrepancy to be happening in terms of font size. We are comfortable with this? Good. So the reasons. Why the river is shifting only in the area where the river lines are close to each other? Where do you see river? So these are the low. So in the alluvial sedimentary plains, you will have many areas which are low lying. That is why they can frequently shift in that region. Okay. So the reasons, first of all, excessive siltation during rainy season. Okay. Then after that, erosion across the river banks. Okay. So clearly, many of you have opened up the live streaming of Chandrayaan along with the session. So please understand, I'm not going to repeat these parts. But so I'll give you the break, guys. Hold your horses. I'll give you the break, and right at the time of landing. Okay. So so that you get that opportunity. Okay. I hope that works. Right. Vivek, you need break right now. Okay. No, I am not going to give you break right now. Please, let's not have that. We will we will give the break at around that point of time so that you have unhindered access. Okay. Yes. So in the region of Purnia, you would have observed this very frequently. So here, when we talk about erosion across the river banks, it increases the amount of sediment carried. Now, why there is a greater amount of erosion across the river bank? You have to understand that there is a massive level of deforestation which is being carried out. So massive level of deforestation means there's a kind of an erosion which we will study in the next module, that is referred to as the stream bank erosion, where the banks of the streams, or the streams, they end up eroding their banks. Banks means the sides. So that is why deforestation is one of the causes. And another factor which adds on to the amount of debris is basically that you have a lot of waste which is dumped readily into the rivers. Construction waste, solid waste, everything is dumped into the river. Anything that you dump in the river, you are reducing the flow, you are reducing or limiting the availability of volume where the river can flow. So even construction activities, right? Then sudden high amount of rainfall. Okay. So these are your preliminary factors. These are your preliminary conditions which leads to frequent flooding. Now, due to climate change, These factors are significantly increasing sudden onset of huge amount of rainfall, leading to flash floods, and more amount of cloudbursts also leading to these floods, what we have observed in the region of Himachal and Uttarakhand. Now that is a commonality which is developing in these mountainous areas, particularly during the rainy season. If you take a look at 10 years back, it was around 10 years back on 15th, 16th of June when that disastrous incident of Kedarnath happened. And during that disaster, 25 to 35,000 people, they lost their life because of that event of cloudburst. So in many of the cases, the slope is also not stable. You have carried out so much amount of construction activities that if there is an increase in water flow, that slope simply falls into the river along with all the houses, all the debris. That will increase the flow of the water that will get deposited on the bottom. So what can be done? What can be the basic process or the remedy? First of all, better prediction methodologies. Better prediction methodologies. Installing Doppler radar system. Doppler radars, something that you would be studying in the portion of science and tech. So these are the kinds of radars which will not only tell you, or which don't only tell you the areas where it is going to rain, it will also give you an idea about the intensity of the rainfall, how long it will rain, and what is the duration, etc. The details, the qualitative details of the rainfall is given by Doppler radars. Presently, what happens is, and here basically ask any of your seniors who are there in the services, any of your colleagues who are there in services, particularly in the regions such as eastern Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, etc. Now the notification that is received from the Indian Meteorological Department is as vague as there is going to be heavy rainfall, the water level in the river can rise. Now water level can rise by how much? How much amount of rainfall is predicted? How are you supposed to carry out evacuation? So there have been certain incidents where, following this particular kind of an alarm or warning, the district magistrate and the local administration has ordered the vacation of that area, that vacate these regions, vacate the low-lying areas. The low-lying areas are going to drown first. And it has been found out that it has rained small amount and the water level has risen by 1 millimeter. Not enough difference to be observed as well. So when you do this exercise, the next time people lose faith in your decision making. And the next time, let's say 10 days later, when you again order the evacuation, what happens? Nobody takes heed of that. And then again, following the same warning that there will be substantial amount of rainfall, the water level might increase. You might observe a rise of water level by 2 to 3 meters or 4 to 5 meters, causing devastating floods, causing huge amount of losses. So as the in charge of district, oftentimes you are left in a kind of a predicament, not knowing what to do based upon the warning. So we have to get very precise with the warning systems, and we have the technology for that. We just need to deploy it in a larger amount. Okay. Now, then after that, building of embankments. Okay. Embankments. What is embankment? So basically, on the side of the river, you build a kind of a wall like structure, like a levee of sorts, right? So as to restrict the flow. Even if the water level increases by a couple of meters, water is restricted there. But the embankments, nowadays you will observe, now if you have been born and brought up in such areas which are prone to floods, you would be very much prone to the kind of a practice where during the time of the rainy season, people fill a lot of sand in gunny bags, in large bags, and they start piling it up on the side of the river. I'm sure many of you would have observed this, that they start piling it up on the side of the river so that even if the water level increases, it doesn't encroach into your houses. So that is the embankment building. So that building of embankments prevents the floods, but it has to be strong. Because if, let's suppose, the water level has come up to this area, you have contained it in an embankment, and let's suppose the embankment breaks, the amount of water which will suddenly start flowing into one area, that will be unparalleled. And in the region of Bihar, this is something which is frequently observed because of, obviously, who builds the embankments in many of the areas? It is the government contractors, and the government contractors, the kind of work that they do. In many of the cases, I'm not saying in all the cases, in many of the cases, you and I, both of us, are aware that what kind of work is done. So when these embankments break, the devastation caused is unparalleled. Then you have to carry out desilting and dredging activities. No, embankments are not dams. So think about it. If the river is flowing like this, on the sides you build a wall-like structure. Not a very tall wall, but something where, rather than having a kind of a sand bank or a soil bank, you have a concretized or a brick kind of structure which is built. Okay. So here, desilting and dredging on a regular basis. Okay. So these are few of the remedies that we can easily carry out. Building of, so this will prevent the occurrence of floods. Building of, desilting and dredging means what? That regularly you extract that deposition from here. You remove that deposition from here. Okay. So building alternate emergency channels. Okay. So building alternate emergency channels. So here, when we say building alternate emergency channels, okay, fair enough. Okay. So fine, let's have a break, and we'll meet again in 7 to 8 minutes, right? Yes, the background voices are also coming in. So let's have a break, and let's come back, convene again in 5 to 7 minutes. I hope that works for everyone. Okay. We'll continue in 5 to 7 minutes. So, a mighty congratulations to everyone out here. I hope you have been following it. So, indeed, a proud moment for all of us and a historic moment for all of us, and consider ourselves lucky to have been a witness to this moment. Okay, and I understand it is very difficult as of now to bring back your level of concentration into the portion of the subject again, but indeed we need to try it. This is one of those moments that we cherish. So, yeah, can we continue now with your humble permission? Right? Okay, fair enough. So, basically, we were talking about the various different remedies which can be carried out in order to prevent these floods. We are not talking about the prevention of disaster once the floods have occurred. So please understand, questions are asked in different manner. You can have a kind of a question that how to prevent the damage caused by a flood. That is a different kind of question altogether. So when you talk about how to control the damage caused by a flood, so there you have to develop the aspect, or you have to write about building disaster resilient infrastructure, having them on uplands, etc. But once you are talking about how to prevent floods, so these are one of those areas: building alternate emergency channel. Yes, it has indeed successfully landed. And again, mighty congratulations to everyone. But I would humbly want to bring your attention back to the topic. As you can hear, a lot of background noise in this case as well. But please, let's come back to the topic. Okay? So, when we talk about building alternate emergency channels, so what is that emergency channel? So, let's suppose you have a river flow. Let's suppose you have a flow of a river. Okay? Let's suppose you have a kind of a river like this with its tributaries. Now, what you can do is that in certain areas, you can build a kind of a channel like structure. Okay. Now, that channel like structure can have divergence as well. In the rivers which are very prone to flooding, as soon as the water level increases here, as soon as the water level increases, the excess water immediately will be diverted to those emergency channels. So there won't be significant amount of flooding, and that water can then be stored, can be utilized for other productive purposes as well. Now, after that, here basically you will have another remedy which can be done in order to prevent the impact, is basically by restoring. Yes, it is like artificial distributaries. Yes, perfect. So here what can be done is we can have the restoration of lakes and ponds and other water bodies which are present in an area. So how will that help? So once you observe these lakes and ponds, these act like natural sponges in an area. And when we say a natural sponge, what does a sponge do? It will absorb the excess amount of water, right? Wherever you have excessive amount of water, if you rub it with a sponge, all of that excess water is absorbed by the sponge. So that purpose will be solved here. So in many, for example, in the case of, take the case of Delhi, take the case of Bangalore, take the case of Mumbai, take the case of Hyderabad. Now there, take the case of Chennai. there have been significant and substantial encroachments carried on in these lakes and ponds, where the natural flow and the natural water holding capacity of these lakes and ponds, they are significantly distorted, they are disturbed. So that is why you will observe that when you recharge these ponds, or when you clear these ponds of all the debris, all the encroachments, all the various different types of pollutants, you will find that the pond suddenly has got a greater absorbing power. Ask your older generation or the generation prior to that. They might tell you that yes, floodings were a common phenomena in the rural areas, but not prominently as you see across the country as of now. It would be restricted into certain areas, and that too for certain months only. Now, with the advent of technology, with the advent of modern mechanism, it is a shame if we still have to lose a lot of lives every year, if we still have to suffer losses worth tens of thousands of crores every year due to these regular floods. So this is an area where questions are very frequently asked, be it in the portion of general studies, be it in the portion of optional preparation. Okay. Now, after this, here we come to the portion of the peninsular drainage. Now, when we talk about peninsular drainage, so the drainage system in the peninsular part of the country is much older than the Himalayan drainage, because obviously the peninsular region had been created, had been formed much earlier. Okay, so the drainage here in many of the cases is millions of years older than even before the region of Himalayas got created. Now, here the rivers, they are not fed by the melting of snow and ice. Here you don't have any river which is fed by the melting of snow and ice. But rather, here you will come across those rivers which get generated, germinated, and born because of excessive water concentration in one area and recharged by the groundwater, very shallow level of groundwater in certain area, or maybe by the excessive amount of the springs, natural springs which exist in an area. So due to these properties, you have the occurrence of these rivers and the flow. But here you will observe that the flow is seasonal in nature. Flow is seasonal in nature. Okay. So that means the flow will suddenly increase in the time of the rainy season, and the flow will reduce when you have the dry season. But what we start to do, if for a couple of years the flow is restricted in an area, we start encroaching upon that. We start dumping the waste in that. So when the flow increases, all that water immediately floods. This is the reason why even rivers such as Kaveri, even rivers such as Godavari, nowadays for the past 5 to 7 years, you would have observed very frequent cases of flooding happening in that area. Okay. Now, basically, the peninsular drainage here, you will find that the Western Ghats, they act as a kind of water divide between the major peninsular rivers, discharging their water into the Bay of Bengal. Now, here you will find that the rivers have fixed courses. They don't have a diversionary path. And there also the path is pretty straightforward. There is no significant meandering. Not much meandering is observed. Shift of river is influenced by rocks. How? Because in the case where you have very hard rocks, it is very difficult for the river to make its own new path. In the earlier situation, we had seen that yes, you had a low lying area, but then at some point or the other, the river would have eroded the sediments to come into that low lying area, right? And that is something which you cannot experience, that is something which you cannot observe in the case of the peninsular drainage. Okay. Now, peninsular rivers are characterized by fixed course, absence of meanders, and non-perennial flow of water. Narmada and Tapi are the exceptions in the case of the peninsular rivers because they move to the west, right? So why? Because they move through the Rift Valley, and hence they move from east to west. Okay. Now, This is your basic differentiation which is done for the Himalayan and the peninsular drainage based upon the basic characteristics about the places where they originate, the nature of the flow, whether you will find antecedent superimposed rivers. So antecedent rivers mostly you will find in the case of the Himalayan drainage. Okay, so here you will find in the case of the Himalayan drainage, you will find antecedent and consequent rivers, whereas in peninsular rivers, you will find superimposed rivers in general. Then they are smaller, they have a fixed course and well adjusted valleys, very small river basin as well. So the rivers in the Himalayan region, they are youthful, they are active, and they carry out significant amount of deepening in the valleys. The valleys, they start to get deeper and deeper. Whereas the peninsular rivers, they are old rivers with a graded profile, and there the level of erosion is almost reached. They cannot erode any further because they have been eroding that area for a long period of time. So refer to this as a difference which is utilized, which is usable for your prelims. Okay. Now, then we come to few of the river systems, and we will talk about few of the Himalayan river systems. We'll talk about few of the peninsular river systems, but basically these are largely factual. So we shall be concentrating, just like we concentrated on the concept of the shifting of the river course and the flooding of the river. Another concept that we will be concentrating upon is interlinking of rivers. But before that, let us talk about these factual portions. So the Indus River system, it is one of the largest river systems across the world. It encounters or encompasses four different countries altogether, right? So it originates in the region of very close to the Mansarovar Lake in the region of Tibet, that is China. Initially, it moves in the northwestern direction. Then, after that, it takes a bend. And then, after that, it comes in the southward direction. Now, here you have the concept of left bank and right bank tributaries. What is meant by that? So, left bank and right bank tributaries. So, let's suppose a river is moving like this. Let's suppose. Now, you have certain tributaries which will join them from both sides, from both directions. Okay. Now, how to decide which is the left bank, which is the right bank? If I ask you this tributary, T1, that T1 will be left bank or a right bank tributary? What do you think? Very good. Beautiful. It is a left bank tributary. Why? And how do you decipher that? So, again, the same aspect that you have observed in the case of the deviation of the wind and the direction of the wind, here you would observe. So, as the river is flowing, let's suppose, as the river is flowing. Now, imagine yourself to be standing in a position where the flow is, you are looking towards the direction of the flow. So, then your left hand side would form the left bank tributary. Bank tributary. And your right hand side would form the right bank tributary. Okay. So, if I just give you another exercise, so let's suppose the direction is like this, and you have a tributary here T1, here you have a tributary T2. So, T1 is going to be left bank, or T2 is going to be, talk about T2. T2 is going to be left bank or a right bank tributary? What do you think? T2. Very good. T2 is going to be right bank. Perfect. Right bank. This is left bank. Okay. So this river Indus basically covers a very large area. So it is going to cover now these facts. Please don't learn these facts. Okay, what is the length of it? What is the aerial? Don't have those facts rectified or memorized. So it is one of those larger rivers in India. Now, this river Indus, if you observe here, here, this river Indus originates here, initially moves in the northwest direction. Now, that is where it is joined by multiple smaller tributaries, multiple Himalayan smaller tributaries, such as the Shyok, Nubra, Galwan is one of those secondary tributaries of River Indus. So these all move. Here you will observe it comes further, and there it moves into the region of the Arabian Sea. In the meanwhile, it is joined by tributaries coming such as River Kabul. River Kabul is coming from the region of Afghanistan. So the river basin, that is the river in itself, along with the tributaries, you will find that they are going to be present, or they are going to be found in the region of China, that is Tibetan region, India, Pakistan, as well as Afghanistan. Now, majorly the Indus River system that we are aware of, that we encounter, that is basically the aspect of the left bank tributaries. You have the major left bank tributaries. So the major left bank tributaries, are what? These are the Panjnad, what are also referred to as the Panjnad. Panjnad means five rivers. So here you have Jhelum, Chenab, you have Ravi, Satluj, and you have Beas. It is based upon these five rivers that the name Punjab has been derived. Because obviously, long time back when you did not have these walls of partition, so you had this entire land being drained by the five rivers famously. And hence Punjab basically means the land of five rivers, hence Punjab. So the land lying between the two rivers, we call it as Doab. The land lying in between five rivers, Punjab. Now all these rivers, they end up meeting with River Indus at the region of Mithankot in Pakistan, and after that it flows into the region of Arabian Sea, forming a very fertile delta along the way. So here, if you will observe, the Himalayan tributaries such as Shyok, Gilgit, Zaskar, Hunza, Nubra, Shigar, Dras, all of these are your Himalayan tributaries. Right bank tributaries, most of them are right bank tributaries. Kabul, Khurram, Tochi, Gomal, Sangar, even for that matter, Shyok, Gilgit, all of these are right, Nubra, all of these are right bank tributaries. Left bank tributaries, the famous Panjnad, which joins the river Indus around Mithankot. Okay, right? Mithankot is in Pakistan. Okay, now after this, we come to the Ganga river system. Ganga river system gains a particular amount of importance in terms of the cultural reverence, in terms of the cultural tradition, in terms of also the amount of people that it ends up influencing and supporting in their way of life on a direct and an indirect basis. So that is something which the Ganga river system plays a significant role in. Now, in the case of the Ganga river system, also you will find it has got a distinct number of the right bank and the left bank tributaries out there. Very significant number of right bank and left bank tributaries. So it rises in the Gangotri glacier near Gomukh in Uttarakhand, and that is when it is referred to as Bhagirathi. So when the Ganga river system originates, it is not known as River Ganga at that point of time. It is a confluence of Alaknanda and Bhagirathi. So Bhagirathi originates in the region of the Gomukh glacier near Gangotri. Alaknanda originates in the Satopant glacier near the region of Badrinath. Both of them, they meet each other. The confluence happens at what is referred to as Dev Prayag. Now, Prayag is a term which is used to indicate the confluence of two river streams. That is where the term Prayag finds its usage. So, Prayag, basically, where you have confluence of two of the river streams. So, that is where you have even the region of Prayag, that is Allahabad, is also considered to be Prayag because there you have the confluence of river Ganga as well as river Yamuna. So in the entire Ganga river system, in the initial stages before Dev Prayag and around the region of Dev Prayag, you have what is referred to as the Panj Prayags, which exist in the region of Uttarakhand. So let us take a look at the Panj Prayag as well. So when we talk about, yes, Prayag can also be used for confluence of two or more rivers. Yes. So here, Alaknanda has its source in the Satopant glacier above Badrinath. Now, observe the Panch Prayags. You will observe that all the regions or the sources of the origin of these rivers, they form a place of worship or a place of reverence. That tells you that how historically and culturally there has been a tradition of revering the river systems in our country. Why I keep on repeating the cultural and traditional reference to the river systems of the country is because questions are oftentimes framed about the river pollution, and why is it, or even sometimes a prolonged question is asked, a detailed question is asked about why is it important to conserve the river. So if you are able to provide that historical background, that this is a land where rivers have been culturally, traditionally revered for a substantial part of history, that gives weightage to your answer. So here, observe that Alaknanda, it originates from the Badrinath, that is the Satopant glacier. Now it is joined from the left hand side by Dhauli Ganga. It is this Dhauli Ganga which significantly gets impacted due to the NTPC's Vishnugarh Tapovan project. And it is across these areas where you also have the region of Joshimath getting impacted by frequent cloud bursts. Now, they meet each other at the region which we refer to as Vishnu Prayag. Okay. It ends up meeting each other at a region which is referred to as Vishnu Prayag. Then it continues further. It is joined by the river Nandakini, which originates across one of the faces of Nanda Devi. So, Nanda Devi is a large peak. Now, there across one of these, you have the Nandakini. So, that will meet river Alaknanda at what is referred to as Nandaprayag. And then eventually you have from a source close to Nanda Devi itself, you have another small river that is Pindar Ganga, which joins them at Karnaprayag. Okay. Then you have the right bank tributary, that is river Mandakini, which originates from the region around Kedarnath, and that meets river Alaknanda at Rudraprayag. Okay, so Mandakini is the river which got impacted due to the cloud burst which happened in the case of Kedarnath disaster, and that had its impact across the entirety of the Ganga river system. So it meets at Rudraprayag. Then, furthermore, the river flow carries on, and basically it meets river Bhagirathi at Dev Prayag. Okay, so this is where after this it is referred to by the name Ganga. Before this, you don't have the name Ganga which is associated. After this, you have the name which is associated with it, that is river Ganga. Now, river Yamuna originates at the Bandarpooch glacier near Yamunotri. Okay, so Yamuna originates near Bandarpooch glacier near Yamunotri. Okay, that is where it ends up originating, and then it flows into this particular area and it joins river Ganga at Allahabad, and that is why it is also referred to as Prayagraj. Okay, now these are what are famously referred to as the Char Dhams, which are being connected by the Char Dham highway, which is in so much amount of controversy because of the environmental impact that it is said to have carried across the destabilization of many of the slopes of the Himalayan stretches. Now, then the tributaries, if you refer to it, right? So, what is the name of the stream that is originating from Badrinath? This is Alaknanda. Alaknanda, as its source at Satopant Glacier above Badrinath. Okay, so this is Alaknanda. Okay, now the important tributaries, if you observe, so it has got many important right bank and left bank tributaries. So when we talk about the left bank tributaries, initially you have Ram Ganga here. This is Ram Ganga. So Ram Ganga is a tributary, and Ram Ganga is the famous river which drains through the Corbett National Park, the Corbett Tiger Reserve. That is where Ram Ganga moves through. So that is where you have Ram Ganga. Then basically you will observe River Gomti. The capital city of Lucknow lies across the banks of River Gomti. Then you will observe another mighty of these rivers, that is Ghagra. Ghagra is joined by various different tributaries as well. Right. It is a mighty river. It also, in certain areas, is antecedent. In the case of the newer ranges of the Himalayas, it is considered to be antecedent. Right. And then you have River Gandak, and then basically River Kosi, which is also considered to be antecedent. Here you have another river which forms for some portion the border between West Bengal and Bihar, and that is the river which we refer to as River Mahananda. That is River Mahananda. Now, this is basically the major left bank tributaries. In fact, around the up till the 1700s, this river Tista that you see, that river Tista would also end up meeting River Ganga. It is only later on that there was a kind of a stream capture and River Tista started joining Brahmaputra. So as recent as up till the 1700s and up till the 17th century, even River Tista had its flow associated with River Ganga. Now, furthermore, River Yamuna, if you will observe, this direction is also shaped by the presence of the upland or the Delhi Ridge and the Aravalis, and this also starts draining to the east. It is joined by multiple of these peninsular tributaries. Here you have the right bank tributary. Amongst the most important right bank tributary of River Ganga is River Yamuna. It joins it at Allahabad. Okay, that is where it joins it. That is what is also referred to as Prayagraj. Another important right bank tributary is basically River Son. River Son also has got another tributary, that is River Rihand. Rihand project is on that Rihand river. So Rihand also ends up draining its water into River Son. Now, then furthermore, as it moves, here you will find that River Ganga takes a sudden southward bend around the region of the Raj Mahal Hills. Around the area of the Raj Mahal Hills, that is where River Ganga will take a sudden southward bend. Okay. Now, here, as it enters into Bangladesh, you have a distributary of River Ganga, and that is known as Hooghly, River Hooghly. River Hooghly is the one which moves through the region of Kolkata. That is where you have the famous Howrah Bridge. So that is across River Hooghly. Now, River Hooghly has also got another tributary, that is River Damodar. It moves through the mineral rich areas of Jharkhand. Damodar is also famous because River Damodar also moves through a rift valley. Very good, guys. Moves through rift valley. And this river Damodar is also known as the sorrow of Bengal. It would be famous, or rather infamous, in the region of Bengal, particularly around the region of Asansol, around the region of Durgapur. In these areas, Raniganj, in all these areas, it would be particularly infamous for causing a lot of floods. So that is why immediately after independence, one of the major projects that was implemented, that is a multi-purpose hydroelectric power project which was implemented, was the Maithan Dam. Maithan Dam is situated bang at the border between the present day Jharkhand and West Bengal. And that Maithan Dam managed to control the spate of river Damodar. Over a period of time, you had multiple different dams which were constructed, and that has reduced the flow. And now Damodar does not cause flood. In fact, now, due to multiple of these dams, while the hydroelectric power potential and hydroelectric power generation is immense, but that also means that the flow in river Damodar has reduced quite substantially. Okay. Yes, the DVC project, Damodar Valley Corporation project. Okay. Now, the important ones you have to remember. Okay. Can we say River Betwa is a secondary tributary of River Ganga? Yes, you can say that. Now we come to one of the mightiest rivers of South Asia in terms of the amount of flow associated, and that is River Brahmaputra. Now, River Brahmaputra is considered to be one of the very mighty because of huge amount of water carried. Now, it originates very much in near the Chemyangdung Glacier in the Kailash ranges. So, River Brahmaputra, River Satluj, River Indus, they all originate very close to each other. And it is owing to the slope of the land that they move in different directions altogether. So here you will find that River Brahmaputra, it starts initially moving between these mountainous areas in a continuous direction of west to east. And at that point of time, it is referred to as Yarlang Sangpo or Sangpo, which is basically what it means is a purifier, right? So that is what the implication is. So that is where it moves to the east. Now it continues to move up till the syntaxial bend of the Himalayas is encountered. Now there you have a mountain which is the Namcha Barwa. Namcha Barwa. My college was near Maithan in Dhanbad. Okay, so you would be aware of, you would have gone to picnics in these areas. Now, by the way, so I think it is ISM, if I'm not mistaken. Nonetheless, when we talk about Namcha Barwa, so Namcha Barwa lies in India, or does it lie above? Many of us, we get confused by this. And I've seen that confusion, hence I'm asking this question. Namcha Barwa lies in India, or does it lie in the region of Tibet? Jamshedpur is on the banks of river Subarnarekha. Yes, it lies in the region, not in India, to the north. It belongs to the entire Arunachal group of Himalayas, but it is not something which lies within the border of the region of Himalayas. Okay. I hope broadly you have some amount of idea about which portion or the peaks and their location, because that question was asked once, and many of the students I found surprisingly next year requesting us that no, tell us about these regions because we don't know. I will give you one of those map the following or match the following kind of a question, and just to gauge your level of. So where is Kumaon and Garhwal region located? In which part of country is the Kumaon and Garhwal region located? Any of us who don't have an idea? Okay. Kumaon and Garhwal region, dear friends, is situated in the region of Uttarakhand. So in Uttarakhand, you would have heard about the language Garhwali, the dialect Garhwali. So, or the entire, or Ruskin Bond stories about the tigers of Kumaon that he has always. So, in case you don't know, Kumaon and Garhwal region is situated in Uttarakhand. Now, I hope you know that. Okay. Okay. So, that is basically, yes, Garhwali dance is also there. So these some of these areas you don't necessarily need to read from a book. It is also when you encounter various different sources of information, you will naturally gain an idea about these. Okay. Yes, the Man Eaters of Kumau, that is the book that I was referring to. So that is again a very good book. So that is basically river Brahmaputra. So around the region of Namcha Barwa, that is where it takes a sudden southward bend, and it forms a very deep gorge around this area. And then when it takes a southern bend, it enters into the stretches of Arunachal Pradesh, and there still it is referred to as the it is not referred to as Brahmaputra. When it enters into Arunachal Pradesh, it is referred to as Siang. Okay, in Arunachal Pradesh the river is known as Siang. And there also it is not very wide, it is moving through mountainous areas, so it has got a lot of force associated. Then around the town of Sadia, close to the border of Arunachal and Assam, that is where you had the very famous Dola Sadia bridge which was inaugurated. It is around that town of Sadia where the left bank tributary of Lohit joins river Brahmaputra. So around that Sadia, you would have heard about the Sadia and the Dola Sadia bridge, the very long Dola Sadia bridge, which has added a kind of a strategic advantage to Indian defense forces when it comes to protecting the northeastern frontiers of the country. So that lies across this area. So after the town of Sadia, that is when Brahmaputra enters the plain areas. And when it enters the plain areas, that is when the river is referred to as the river Brahmaputra. So, in the region of Arunachal, Siang, before that, Sangpo. In the plain areas, as it enters into the Assam region, it carries on a very large floodplain deposits. And that is when the river becomes very wide in many areas to the region, to the slightly to the north and south of Guwahati. If you ever get an opportunity to visit, obviously, please don't risk it during the rainy season, because many of the times the supply gets cut off. But if you get a chance and opportunity to visit, now that the infrastructure has developed in that area, do visit at least the region of Pabitora, Manas. These are the areas that you should visit. So you will find that in many regions, standing on one side of river Brahmaputra, you won't be able to figure out what lies on the other side. That is how wide the river gets. So that is, you will not be able to figure out the other side of the river itself. That is how wide. So this river is very, very wide, and it carries out deposits, many of the deposits in the river channels itself. And many of these deposits across the river channel, right? Many of these deposits across the river channels, they form, yes, the same bridge we are talking about, Vivek. So they form very large riverine islands. They form very large riverine islands. Yes, there is a waterway too. Good. See, this is the kind of accumulated knowledge that I am referring to. Please, the moment you restrict yourself to this course book, this textbook, you are doing yourself injustice. The moment you are accumulating the knowledge, interrelating it together, you are in a good hand. So that forms large amount of riverine islands. Okay. And the example, the largest of the riverine island in the world is, very good, Majuli Island. You need a break. We have taken a break. Okay. You need another break. How many of us need a break? This is the largest riverine island across the world. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break, guys. I don't want to indulge in that to and fro here. So let's take a 10 minutes break. Let's be back, and then we will continue. Okay, so let's take a break. We'll continue at around 7. Okay, be back at 7. A confirmation about the audio, please, if the audio is clear and available. Thank you. So here, in the case of River Brahmaputra, we were talking about the how the river up till the region of Arunachal Pradesh is going to have a kind of a youthful characteristic where it is not going to be very broad, but it is going to have a significant amount of flow associated. Okay, so that is where the hydropower generation is, and the generation capacity is also very high. It is joined by various different tributaries. For example, you have Subansiri, then you have Tista. Now, Tista is also very prominent. It is one of the right, so you have Manas, Sankosh, all of these. Now, Tista is also very prominent in the sense that this river Tista is also a point of contention in terms of water sharing between India and Bangladesh. While this river Tista is very important and the flow of water of this river Tista is very important for the farmers in the region of North Bengal, it is also very important for the region of Bangladesh. Now, it has been happening for now more than a decade, where during the high delegation summits and high level visits that we have in the region of Bangladesh. Now, earlier you had a visit by the ex Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, where in the meeting with the Bangladeshi counterpart, India promised that we will be sharing the water of River Tista. But as soon as he came over back to the country and the nitty gritties came into place, so West Bengal government declined that we are not going to do so. We are not ready to share water with Bangladesh. So Bangladesh got pretty much riled up. And then again, when the government changed, when you had the new government under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, now when Narendra Modi made his first visits to Bangladesh, there again the central government promised that we will go for the water sharing agreement with Bangladesh, because for Bangladesh it is a very sensitive issue, it is a very emotive issue out there. Now, again, the government promised, again, when the government came back or the delegation came back, then again, the West Bengal government basically put up its arms that we are not going to share water with Bangladesh whatsoever. So, even today, if you ever come across the Indo-Bangla relationships, so the sticking point, the sticking thorn is basically the sharing of river Tista. India has promised it multiple times. India has walked back upon this promise multiple times again. Okay, why it turns in the region of Arunachal Pradesh? Are you talking about this turn, Vivek? That is basically because of the slope of the land in itself, and also the here you have the mountainous areas in this entire stretch, and this is where the plain regions start coming in. That is why it flows. Okay, now after this, here, Majuli Island is a riverine island. It is the largest riverine island which is created across the world. That is the Majuli Island. Okay. Now, it traverses eastward longitudinally for a distance of 1200 kilometers in dry and flat region of southern Tibet, where it is known as Sangpo. It emerges as a turbulent and dynamic river after carving a deep gorge in the region of Namcha Barwa. Then the river emerges from the foothills under the name of Siang or Dihang. It is with that name that it enters into the stretches of Arunachal Pradesh. Now, these are the important tributaries: Subansiri, Kameng, Manas, Tista, Sankosh. Now, UPSC has asked a question about the tributaries of Brahmaputra twice, consecutively twice, in 2015 as well, in 2016 as well. So, that is where UPSC has asked a question about this. So you have to be, see, when you are asking, many of you are asking that do we need to learn all these tributaries, etc. The answer is very simple. You require the name of these tributaries for the prelims paper. Now, ideally, what should be the approaches? That if, let's suppose, you hear about the term, let's suppose, Ram Ganga, you should be able to figure out whether Ram Ganga is a tributary of river Ganga or Indus or Brahmaputra. Okay, nobody is going to ask you list all the tributaries, but there will be a list of options given, and amongst those options you have to have the ability to select the right ones out there. Okay, now that is basically the approach that you need to follow. Shreyash, Shrayesh, sorry. Shrayesh, uh, is there any issue with the? So Shrayesh, do one thing. Write a mail about that, and we'll take it forward. Okay. So write a mail. Okay. We'll take it up. Don't worry. As of now, just focus on the, see, if there is any kind of hesitancy in what to study, what not to study, always focus on the PPTs. Let me assure you that the classes, if you are attending, the quality and the level of information, I can vouch for my subject definitely, but also the other subjects, because we keep a track of what is being given in the other subjects as well. I can vouch for it that the level and the quality of material that is being handed out to you, the quality of information that is handed out to you, that is more than sufficient, uh, even for your prelims and mains examination. It is much better than, and in a qualitative aspect, it will take your concepts to much higher elevation than, let's suppose, in comparison to any other sources of information that you get. So whenever in doubt, that whether I refer to this material or that material, I'm not getting this material, I'm not getting that, restrict yourself to the PPTs and the ARMs. Keep revising them multiple times. Don't let these small hindrances bother your preparation. Okay. Why Sangpo is takes bent in the region of Namcha Barwa? That is basically because that is where the Himalayas themselves take a syntactial bend. Okay, right? Dinesh, at least in my subject, I can vouch for it that, and any of you who have referred to the various reference books also, you would attest to the fact that I have many of the candidates here who are repeating the session, who have attended the earlier batch. So basically, you would attest to the fact that the type or the level of concepts that we are covering in the class here, that is much more than any of the reference books that you pick in the market. Okay, so that is something that I can give you with the level of assurance that this, if you have been very rigorous and meticulous through the classes, then the amount of advantage that you will gain over your competition, that is something that you can capitalize upon. Okay, so just restrict yourself to that. I have completed recordings of live class only till lecture 4, and I'm yet to do the recordings of tablet lectures. I will tell you about the portion of revision, Mayank. In the final sessions, I will tell you how to revise, how to make use of the tablet lectures as well. If you are able to revise from the live sessions and the tablet lecture, then you don't need to open the book at all. Let me be very categorical in that as well. You will not be required to open the book in any case. Okay. Now, Enum, sometimes I do take a look at that. Sometimes I do. But we have a very established team of people who have qualified through the mains multiple times, and we put them in charge, and the specialized ones, put them in charge. So, for example, somebody is having a specialization in polity, economy, in geography. So, we put them in charge of evaluation in many of the cases. Okay. Now, then, when we talk about the peninsular river system, you have the river system which was at one point of time referred to as the sorrow of Odisha, and that is the river Mahanadi. Now, river Mahanadi originates near Sihava in the region of Raipur district, which is also now known as Sihava region. Is known as by what name? Those of you belonging from the region of Chhattisgarh. Any of us? Okay. That is also what is known as Dhamtari. So around the region of Dhamtari, again, a good place to visit if ever you get an opportunity. I know I have told you multiple places that you should take a visit, but when and where you get an opportunity. So that is where it originates. This is the river Mahanadi. This is the river Mahanadi, right? And here it has got important tributaries. Now, it would cause significant amount of floods in the region of Odisha. But then, just like in the case of Damodar, you have the construction of the Maithan Dam, which prevented those floods. Here, you had the construction of the Hirakud Dam. So, Hirakud Dam, one of the largest dams of the country. So, Hirakud Dam basically also prevented those floods. Now, in the earlier stretches, that is around the region of Dhamtari, around the region of Raipur, you would find that this river is having a significant amount of flow to the rocky areas. So, it is not navigable in that stretches. Navigability means what? Where you are able to move men and material with the help of boats. So, if a river moves through a rocky terrain, it is not very navigable. But then in the lower stretches around Odisha, that is where it is very navigable. It forms a large amount or a very huge deltaic formation and deltaic deposit. It also ends up forming small estuaries in this area in many of the stretches. So navigation is carried out in the lower stretches. Now, if we talk about the tributaries here, if you talk about the tributaries, yeah. So you have amongst the right bank tributaries, amongst the right bank tributaries, you'll find that which are the important right bank tributaries, you will find Ong and Tel. Whereas the left bank tributaries are the ones where you have the larger one. So you have Shionath, Jonk, very good. So the entire Mahanadi river system is very important for the agricultural prosperity in the twin state in both the states of Chhattisgarh as well as in Odisha. Okay, there it is very important, and it has got a kind of a cultural reverence as well, right? Where Shionath meets river Mahanadi, that is also a place of worship. Okay, so that is where it is. It has got a significant amount of importance. Then you have Hasdeo, you have Mand and Eep. These are your left bank tributaries. Here also, see, the more you repeat it, better you will be at recalling it. It won't come in the first day, guys. It won't come in the second reading. It won't even come in the third reading. After 4 or 5 consecutive readings, then you will start to recall some of them. So that much effort is required. If you are vying for a top job in the country, that much amount of effort is required. Then we come to the largest of the peninsular river systems, that is river Godavari, which is also referred to as Dakshin Ganga because of its importance and also because of the large length. Now, this originates in the region close to Western Ghats, and that is in the region of Trambakeshwar in the Nashik district of Maharashtra. That is where it has its origin. That Trambakeshwar is also considered to be a shrine that is also worshipped. So here there are multiple different tributaries which end up joining it from the left bank side. From the right bank side, the major tributary is river Manjra. Now here, this also forms a very picturesque, very wide delta before it meets the Bay of Bengal. There, if ever you are traveling by train, so before the railway station that you have of Rajamundri, now there at Rajamundri, you will be able to observe a very long railway bridge which moves through these deltaic stretches of river Godavari. So that gives you a very unique bird's eye view of how a river forms a deltaic portion, and these are very significantly populated by mangroves. It is here in this deltaic stretch where you also have the Korenga Wildlife Sanctuary, which is out there, where you have very unique species of mangrove vegetation as well. So there, this river Godavari is also navigable in its lower stretches. So here you will observe basically the tributaries. The principal tributaries are the Pravara, the Purna, Manjara, Penganga, Vardha, Venganga, and Pranhita. So Pranhita basically is the tributary which is formed by the confluence of Vainganga, Penganga, and Varda. All of them, they form a stream which is referred to as Pranhita, and that Pranhita then ends up joining river Godavari. Okay, you have the Indravati, which comes from the left bank side, and it is across this river where you have the very famous Indravati Tiger Reserve as well. So in Chhattisgarh, that is where you have the river Indravati. The Maner and the Sabri are the comparatively smaller ones. Now, the right bank tributary, the major one is River Manjra. Here you have important water storage structures. And this river Manjra is very important for providing supply of drinking water in the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra and Telangana. Now, those areas are comparatively drier. Those areas receive lesser amount of rainfall. So there the availability of water is always in scarce quantities. So here you have important water storage structures. Okay, important water storage structures in the form of Nizam Sagar and Singur project. Very good. Singur project. Nizam Sagar is very important to provide water supply to the dry region of Telangana. Okay, so it is in the lower stretches where you will find, after all the tributaries have emptied their water into Godavari, in the lower stretches it is very prone to floods as well, and Godavari also is navigable in the lower stretches. Then you have another of the major rivers in the southern part of the country, that is River Krishna. River Krishna originates near Mahabaleshwar in the Sayadri, that is the Western Ghats. Okay, and it also flows to the east. Now, here you have tributaries such as Ghat Prabha, Mal Prabha, Bhima, Tungabhadra. Tungabhadra in itself is basically made up of two rivers, Tunga and Bhadra. That is what is also referred to as the Tungabhadra Doab. So, the next time that you encounter the portion of medieval history, when you read about the conflict between the Vijayanagar and the Bahmani kingdom, now there you will come across the conquest of Tungabhadra Doab and the dispute of Tungabhadra Doab, that how Tungabhadra Doab was always in a point of contention and the kingdoms wanted to vie for or have their control of Tungabhadra Doab. That is because it is that Tungabhadra Doab which would be very agriculturally productive. And nowadays, the region around the Bhadra River, that is very rich in iron deposits, very rich in iron deposits, and also very substantial amount of wildlife population. There you also have the Bhadra Tiger Reserve, which is in existence. So that is again around the region of Tungabhadra. The Musi is also one of those. Okay, so Musi basically is the river which drains through which famous city? Which famous city is the one through which river Musi drains through? Hyderabad. Very good. Beautiful, guys. So this drains through Hyderabad. So that is the approach I want you to develop, where you interrelate the portion of history with geography and gives you an idea about the polity of that region. Drains through Hyderabad. Okay. So this is basically the Krishna basin. So here you would observe you have even river Koina is one of those tributaries. So Bhima is one of the largest tributaries of river Krishna. Okay. So here you have the Tungabhadra Doab in itself. So you have Ghat Prabha, Mal Prabha, Vedavati, Muneru, Musi. All of these are tributaries. After that, we come to a river which is famous for inciting lot of emotions, which is always riled in or is always entrapped in some or the other dispute out there, and that is river Kaveri. Kaveri is much more than a river in the region of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. It is associated with people's faith and belief systems as well. They revere this river to an extent that people not living in that area cannot even imagine. So, this originates in the Brahmagiri hills of the Kodagu district in Karnataka, very close to Coorg, right? If you go to Coorg, you have a 2 hour drive from Coorg to the origin of river Kaveri, and that is what is a place which is also referred to as Thal Kaveri. Now here, Kaveri or Kaveri, any spelling that you write is uh, okay. Okay, don't worry about the spelling. Nobody is going to point you out on the spelling, whether the spelling is. So this is the origin point of Kaveri, and this is also a place of reverence. Here also you will find huge number of hundreds and thousands of pilgrims visiting this every year, and you get to see the origin. So where you have from a kind of a pool, you have the water which keeps on accumulating, and then eventually it forms a large river system. Now this river is very unique in the sense that when we talk about the upper course of the river, the upper course of the river the upper course receives rainfall during the advancing monsoon, that is the southwest monsoon. And the lower course of the river receives rainfall during the northeast monsoon and the retreat of the monsoon. So that is why you have significant amount of water flow, which is ensured through and through. So here, the upper fall from the southwest monsoon. Okay, so the river basically the upper catchment area receives rainfall during the southwest monsoon season, and the lower part receives rainfall during the retreat monsoon and the northeast monsoon rather. So here you will have the tributaries such as Kabini. So there also you have a water storage dam which is created, and Kabini is also very well known as one of those places where you will find three tiger reserves having a confluence. That is the Nagarhole protected area, the Nagarhole Tiger Reserve, the Mudumalai, and the region of Bandipur. So ever in your life, if you have to get a sure shot sighting of tiger, right? Not like your visit to Jim Corbett. Mostly, if you visit Jim Corbett, you will be left empty handed. You will be able to spot certain deers and you will return. Any of your friends who have visited Jim Corbett, ask them how many of them have been able to sight tigers. There are very less. If you have to have a sure shot and multiple sighting of the tigers, go to the region of Kabini. This is teeming with wildlife. So then you have Bhavani as well as Amravati. Okay, so that is basically the aspect of river Kaveri. This is a list about the rivers, right? Rivers, their origin, the tributaries, and the important cities through which they move through. Okay, this is for your reference for your prelims. For prelims, when you get the PDF, all this image will be clear. I understand right now this is not something which is very clear, but use that for your reference. You will get this figure. Don't worry. Okay. The controversy about river Kaveri is about the sharing of the water, and both Karnataka and this is a matter of that you will study in your portion of polity, I'm sure, when you study about the interstate water dispute. And in the constitution, which is the article which covers the interstate water dispute and the setting up the tribunal, all the doyens and experts of constitution out there and polity out there. 368 is something very different. 368 is about the amendment process. See, it is not as if I am completely averse to polity. So it is 263 or 262? 262. Okay. Get sure of that. Okay. Distance of river, the length of river? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Please don't learn it. Okay. Now, then we come across certain inland rivers. Inland rivers are considered to be those rivers which don't end up meeting the sea or an ocean. They end up disappearing in the land area itself. And here we take so even river Ghaggar is an example of inland river. Here you can take the example of river Luni. Okay, river Luni. So when you consider river Luni, it originates in the Aravallis near Pushkar in the Ajmer district of Rajasthan. Originates in the Aravallis near Pushkar in the Ajmer district of Rajasthan. Okay, so that is river Luni. Now, river Luni is also having a very unique feature. Now, this is absolutely seasonal, very seasonal. So, there during the dry season, you will observe the river channels to barely be able to carry water. Some amount of it will appear to you like a small drain of sorts. It won't give you a resemblance of a river, right? But during the rainy season, it will be filled with water. So that is very, very seasonal, much seasonal than even many of the peninsular rivers out there. Now, in the upper portion, in the upper stretches of River Luni, you will find that there is significant amount of flow which is associated with water. So in the upper stretches, you will find the presence of fresh water. Okay, whereas in the lower stretches you will find that the flow reduces. The flow reduces. That means what will happen? Evaporation will happen. And when evaporation happens, what is the consequence? Water starts turning saline. So that is why in this river, no, it doesn't cross the Tropic of Cancer twice. There is one river, Indian river, which crosses the Tropic of Cancer twice. And which is that? So in the upper course, it is Mahi. Very good. Mahi is the river which crosses Tropic of Cancer twice. Upper stretches or upper course, you have fresh water. And the lower course, you have saline water. Due to high evaporation. High evaporation. Okay, it eventually disappears into the region of Run of Kutch, carrying its deposits. It doesn't enter into the region of Arabian Sea, and hence it is considered as an inland river. Now we come to the portion which is one of the favorite areas, which has been one of the favorite areas for UPSC for a long time. For more than a decade and a half, UPSC has been harping on this particular question, that is interlinking of rivers, whether it should be carried out or not. If yes, why? If no, why? Okay. So before that, what is the concept of interlinking? So in our country, right now, take the instance right now. Many areas of the country are experiencing flood-like situation. Simultaneously, many areas of the country are experiencing drought-like situation. So a country as large and diverse as India, simultaneously you have the crisis of flood as well as the crisis of droughts. So in the early 1900s, during the British rule itself, you had a kind of a prospect where certain British officials of Madras presidency at that point of time, They suggested that why don't we interlink the rivers through the help of the canals and the channels that we will dig, so that we transfer the surplus water from one river into the area which is deficient, so that rather than floods and droughts occurring simultaneously, all these areas, they get adequate amount of water in return. So that is where the concept came into existence. Now the Britishers, they started building some canals. Obviously they could not, because the task is humongous. Immediately after independence, again this thought process was picked up. But obviously you can understand, you can appreciate the fact that a newly independent country had its own set of priorities. We did not have that much amount of resources. But then during the time, so it went significantly back into the cold storage, where it was picked up time and again, it was tinkered with, not much was done. Then the late Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee is credited with this, where he picked it up again. He set up various committees to study about the prospect of interlinking. And there, the entire interlinking project was basically something which was classified into three categories. One is the interlinking amongst the peninsular rivers, one is the interlinking amongst the Himalayan rivers, and then the interlinking between the peninsular and the Himalayan rivers. Overall, this would be a very long project. This would be amongst the most ambitious project that modern India has implemented or executed. Obviously, it came with a price tag. And always, when you have these kinds of projects which are being thought about, there's a lot of debate and discussion to and fro, that in a poor country like India, do we have enough resources to devote in the portion of interlinking of rivers? Can we utilize that resource somewhere else? But then you have to understand that the benefit, let's suppose if we talk about the cost, so the cost required for the construction, as of the estimate which was given around 4 to 5 years ago, when the government again picked it up, was around 183 billion dollars. 183 billion dollars is the cost for implementation of the entirety of the project. And that is, if you can imagine the magnitude of it, that is equivalent to the uh, entire GDP of our western neighbor, that is Pakistan, right? So it is not a small sum of money by any standard. So but you have to understand that all this large sum of money, it is not as if you have to pay upfront. You are not buying a commodity in the market. So you have to obviously have innovative methods of funding as well, and the benefits associated will be very in a long run driven format. It has got certain disadvantages associated as well. So here I want you to develop your own opinion whether the interlinking should be carried out or not. Okay, I will give you the list of advantages, I will give you the list of disadvantages associated as well. But you have to be able to form your opinion and you have to be strong towards it. That is what the interview board will check. Even this year, interview board has asked this question, right? So whether interlinking should be carried out or not. If yes, why? If no, why? So whichever direction that you tilt into, you have to be very straightforward that this is the reason why it should not be carried out, or this is the reason why it should be carried out. Be strong in your conviction. Okay, so let us talk about the benefits, the advantage, as well as the disadvantage when it comes to the interlinking. Advantage and the disadvantages. So first of all, the advantage, it will help us to tackle the twin disasters of floods and droughts. Twin disasters of floods and droughts. Then it will help us take care of drinking water supply. It will provide greater water for irrigation. So it will help us in agriculture, and it will also help us bring many of the drier areas under irrigation and cultivation. So beneficial for irrigation, for irrigation, right? Bring newer areas under cultivation. How the interlinking help in flood? See, why do the floods happen? Because in one of the rivers you have excess water. That is why the water will overflow. What if, let's suppose you have the two rivers, here you have excess water, you divert that into an area which has deficit. So here, which was earlier experiencing drought, here you have supplied sufficient water, and here the excess water is being diverted, so no flood. So for example, Kosi Mechi interlinking which is being carried out, so in the river Kosi you have the frequent problems of flood. Whereas when you talk about river Mechi, which is a tributary of river Mahananda, now it moves through the drier areas of northeastern part of Bihar. Very dry region, not significant amount of irrigation facilities. So there you will frequently come across the events of drought-like events and crop failures due to dry conditions. So excess water from Kosi when diverted to Mechi, so Kosi will not flood, Mechi will get enough water. So twin problems are solved. Is that understood? Okay. Yes, the region of Araria, Kishanganj, Farbisganj, that area. Okay. Now, beneficial for irrigation. Now, can improve navigation, water transport, and navigation. Will bring about prospect of aquaculture, right? Okay. So, bring prospects of aquaculture where you rear fishes and other such aquatic products which will earn you income. Now, what are the disadvantages here? Disadvantages here are huge cost, huge cost which is involved. That is, as per the estimates, 183 US billion dollars. Then it can lead to a situation, for example, where you have the building of the canals. Now, that building of the canals will lead to displacement of a large section of population. So, displacement of population, population, then will disturb the wildlife, the wildlife. For example, the Kane Betwa interlink is going to drown many areas of the Panna Biosphere Reserve, and that is one of the critical habitats for the tiger population. So, in a way, the region for the tiger population will further be restricted, isn't it? So, example you can give Panna Reserve. Okay, then disturbs the ecological flow, the ecological flow of river. So you will have a kind of a stagnant water for a longer period of time. Okay, so here you will observe that the flow gets disturbed. So that means it will impact the local biodiversity. For example, you will have the many of the aquatic animals who won't get that required amount of nourishment. For example, you have the gangetic dolphins which can get impacted, the alligator species of gharials can get impacted. So impacts aquatic life. Okay. Now, by the way, another benefit, associated benefit of this process of interlinking, during the process of interlinking, if you can think about it, if you can expand your level of critical thinking in that direction, when you carry out a infrastructural project of this huge magnitude, then basically the construction sector is one of the largest generators of employment anywhere across the world. Construction will receive significant amount of boost. And when the construction receives such a significant amount of boost, many people will find employment. So employment generation, demand in the economy can also get up or end up getting created. Okay. So this is basically the pros and cons. Stagnant means that is why you have the ecological flow which is mentioned here. Okay. Now, land acquisition can become an issue. That is where you have the huge cost which is involved. Okay. Yes, Divya, that is correct. Employment generation and multiplier effect on the economy. So these are your various projects which are promulgated. Now, I will give you the list here. So in this is the website that you can access for the list of all the various different storage structures that are in the country. I will give you a separate map as well for the mapping session, which we shall have maybe on this Saturday, or we will have an extra session for mapping separately. I will give you enough time to revise all the portions. Then we will have some meaningful 1.5 or 2 hour session separately only for mapping. I'll notify you with the time as well. So here you will, at this website, you will get the list of all the large dams and also the various different interlinking which is being carried out. Okay, so here the interlinking, these are your the portions of the Himalayan component. So this is where you have the Kosi Mechi interlink. This is where you have the Kane Betwa interlink. You have the peninsular system of the interlinking as well. Yes, this Saturday you will have class. Yes, we will have an extra session because we did not have it on 14th of August. So we will have a compensatory session on Saturday morning. Okay. Now, here, this is the example of the Kane Betwa interlink. Kane Betwa interlink project is being implemented to provide much needed water to the dry Bundelkhand area. Bundelkhand region is very, very dry. Multiple seasons of crop failures. So that is why you will find many people from the region of Bundelkhand. Bundelkhand is the region which stretches to the northern part of Madhya Pradesh and the southwestern part of Uttar Pradesh. So it is that particular area. Now, it is in that area where you will find many people who would work in agricultural lands and who would own agricultural lands due to multiple crop failures and a kind of land degradation uh, which has been attained over a period of time. Now, many of them, they migrate to the larger cities such as Lucknow, such as Bhopal, Indore, Delhi. Now, and they work as migrant laborers. So, in order to bring water in that restive area or the dry region of Bundelkhand, that is where the Kane Betwa interlink is being implemented. But here, one thing which you have to keep in mind is the basic fact that this interlinking, it is not as if it is the final solution to all the problems. Here, water conservation is the ultimate solution. And that is what you have to write in the way forward of your mains answer, be it for your optional, be it for your GS, even in your interview. That yes, there are benefits associated with interlinking. Yes, there are disadvantages, but interlinking is not the ultimate solution. It can happen that even after interlinking, many areas remain dry, many areas get flooded. What is the ultimate solution is that each area should focus upon as much amount of water conservation and utilizing each and every liter of water which flows through that region. Because don't forget, every year you have millions and billions of gallons of water which drain into the sea. So you have to manage to utilize that water. And once you do that, you create enough natural aquifers like lakes, ponds, and micro watershed management, what is also implemented by the government's Niranchal scheme. That is where you have the ultimate solution for water sufficiency. Otherwise, we shall be grappling from one form of water scarcity to another form of water scarcity. Okay? Now, then here we come to the portion of forests. Now, this is a portion that you cover in the area of environment ecology as well. But nonetheless, here, when we talk about, yes, traditional relevance of the rivers will also be lost. That also you can talk about. Here, what is relevant for your prelims and what is relevant for your mains? Get a very clear idea about that. For the prelims, you get questions associated with types of forests, regions where they are found, or examples of trees, regions where they are found, and obviously conditions required. Mayank, the stagnation will happen in certain areas because the flow will reduce. It is the flow which creates, which is very important for the freshwater ecosystem. But if the water level is not sufficient, then the flow will reduce and that will create stagnancy, greater evaporation. Sometimes water can get saline as well. Okay. So this is something relevant for your prelims, and also keep a track of the latest forest report. In the mains, you get question associated with latest forest report, which is released every 2 years, and its findings. Even later part of this year, it is expected that a forest report will be released. If not by the month of December 2023, then by January 2024, you will have another forest report which will be released. So that is something which is going to be relevant. But for the portion of forest, I would have that request to you guys that when you cover this area after you have covered the climate. Because remember what we studied in the Köppen classification, the natural vegetation in an area mostly is the sum product of the amount of rainfall which is received and the temperature. So if you have an idea about the temperature and the rainfall experienced in a region, you will have a better clue about the forest as well. Okay. So here when we talk about the forest in India, you find different types of forests which are out there. Forest conservation is not going to be asked in GS paper 1. It is going to be asked in the amendment bill, etc. That will be asked in GS paper 3 in the portion of environment ecology. So here, when we talk about the types of forests, so in India, you have the various different types of forests. You have tropical, evergreen, and semi evergreen forests. So these will grow in areas where the rainfall is greater than 200 centimeter per year. Okay, greater than 200 centimeters. So if the rainfall mostly is above 250 centimeter per year, you will find evergreen. If the rainfall, let's suppose, is less than 250, around 200, 190 to around 220, 230, that is semi evergreen, right? So evergreen will be found where? where the rainfall is highest. That is in the stretches of Andaman Nicobar, in the western part of Western Ghats, in the stretches of northeastern part of the country. And semi-evergreen, slightly less rainier areas in the Western Ghats, in the Andaman Nicobar, in the region of northeastern portion. Then you have deciduous. This is the most dominant forest type across the country. Deciduous forest indicates those kinds of forest where the trees, they all of them, they will shed their leaves during the dry season in order to conserve themselves, because it is during these trees and these leaves they will continue to lose a lot of water due to transpiration process. So that is where they will be able to retain water, they will be able to retain water if they shed their leaves. So during the dry season, it will appear as a barren land. But again, during the rainy season, all these leaves will regrow because the trees then recharge their natural bodily activities. So that is why these are also referred to as monsoonal forest. This is the most widespread forest across the country. This is something that you find having a classification into moist deciduous and also dry deciduous. Moist deciduous in the stretches of areas where rainfall roughly is around 120 to 140 centimeter. That is the ideal quantity, but you can follow what NCRT has given, where the rainfall is between 100 centimeter to 200 centimeter. Then, so even in the bordering areas of semi evergreen and evergreen, you can come across moist deciduous. Then dry deciduous, where the rainfall is in between around 70 centimeter to 100 centimeter. Okay. Then you have thorn forest in desert or desert areas of very dry areas, for example Rajasthan, for example the region of Haryana, western UP, Punjab, all those areas where the monsoon reaches the last and withdraws from at the earliest. So this is where the rainfall around 40 or to 70 centimeter. That is where you'll find the thorn forest. Montane forest in the mountainous areas. So in the mountainous areas, understand the basic concept here. If you have a mountain, for suppose, so will you find the same kind of trees at all the elevation? No. Beyond a certain elevation of 3000 meters or more, you won't find any tree at all. What is referred to as a tree line, that beyond that elevation you don't find the presence of trees at all. There you will find grasses. Beyond a certain height, grasses won't also be found. You will have either mosses or lichens or only snow and ice, right? Whereas at the foothills, lot of rainfall. So maybe in certain cases, even evergreen. Slightly higher up, temperate kind of forests. Slightly higher up, you have the grasses. Slightly higher up, mosses, lichens. So that variation in vegetation exists in the mountainous areas, to be found across the mountains. See, if you are able to find the pattern in these areas, in these topics, then it will be tolerable. Otherwise, if you simply go for a brute force and rote learning, let me give you an assurance, you will never be able to, unless and until you have a great amount of rectifying or memorizing power, you will never be able to have a good hold over this. So try to find a trend over this. Okay, found across mountains. Okay, then you have littoral and swamp forest in the coastal areas. Littoral and swamp means coastal areas, beaches, islands, also marshy tracts around the inland lakes, for example. That is where you'll find, for example, mangrove vegetation. So the types of mangroves, adaptations of mangroves, you will study in very significant detail in the portion of environment and ecology. Whenever your next batch is, you will study that. So that is the type of forest. So as I was telling you, try to study this after immediately you have studied the portion of climate. So observe the pattern here. Observe, this is the very rainy area. Observe, this is very rainy area. So you have the evergreen forests, right? Observe the dry areas, right? The dry areas, thorn forest. And in majority of the parts of average rainfall, deciduous forest. So when we talk about tropical evergreen forest, very heavy amount of rainfall. Generally, in a practical scenario where rainfall is above 250 centimeter every year, that is where you come across the tropical evergreen forest. So where do you find that? So basically, western slope of western ghats, hills of northeastern region, Andaman Nicobar Islands, rainfall is generally higher. So annual precipitation of over 220 centimeter and mean average temperature of higher than 22 degrees Celsius. That is when you will have tropical conditions. If the temperature is lower, that is when you have temperate conditions. This is when you have the tropical conditions. So here you have the examples of rosewood, mahogany, ebony. These are the examples out there. Now, semi-evergreen. The density of the trees is slightly lesser. In the case of the evergreen, you don't have much amount of sunlight coming to the forest floor because the trees are very densely packed. The canopy cover is so significant that the trees are very densely packed. What do we mean by canopy cover, by the way? So whenever you have a tree, let's suppose, you have a tree. Now, this particular tree will have the foliage, right? Will have the foliage, the various different branches, etc. So this entire stretch, that is referred to as the canopy. So for a forest, if you observe this forest from above, if let's suppose you get a view from above, you will be able to observe only the canopy regions. You won't be able to have a sighting of the root or the branches. So that is the canopy cover of an area of a forest. Okay. Even in fact, the density of forest is something which is decided based upon the canopy cover. We will talk about it very shortly. So, in the semi evergreen, you will find that greater availability of sunlight even up till the portion of the forest floor. So, that is why in the forest floor, some types of small plants, etc., you will find. So, where do you find them? In the slightly less rainier areas where you have the rainfall close to around 200 or 190 to 220 centimeter, that is where species of white cedar, hollow kale, they are to be found. So these are to be found in western ghats, northeastern stretches, and also the region of Andaman and Nicobar. Now, tropical deciduous, the most prominent forest, the most widespread forest across the country is the tropical deciduous forest. So here they are also called monsoon forest. Why? Because I will repeat it, because all of them will shed their leaves during the dry season in order to conserve themselves, in order to conserve water. Because during the normal biological and the during the normal activity of the tree and metabolism, during that the tree will absorb water from the soil. That water will be transported through the system of the tree for the requirements. It will go to the leaves and the leaves will start losing that water into the atmosphere by a process which is referred to as transpiration. That causes a net loss of water from the surface. But if the conditions become dry, then what? So, in order to keep themselves alive, they want to retain that moisture at least in the level of the roots. So that is so that they can retain that water. So that is why they will shed their leaves during the dry season. Again, when the moisture sufficiency comes, when there is sufficient rainfall, these trees will start regrowing the leaves again. So here you have the moist deciduous and you have the dry deciduous. Okay. Now, the moist deciduous is where you will have ideal practical situation rainfall between 120 to 140 centimeter, moist deciduous. So rainfall between 100 to 200 centimeters, a broader range. So where they will be found? Eastern states, foothills of Himalayas, eastern slopes of the western Ghats, right? Andaman Nicobar, parts of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, in certain areas, even across the foothills of the Himalayas, there also you will find them. That is the moist deciduous. Example: all the trees utilized for commercial purposes: teak, right? Sal, shisham, maua, all these. So teak, shisham, sandalwood, sal, you would have heard about these names because they are in much higher demand for the furniture market, for the commercial utility. So easy way to remember this is teak, shisham, sandalwood, sal, commercial purposes, moist deciduous. Okay, so that is basically the moist deciduous. Then in the drier areas where the rainfall is around 70 to 100 centimeter, that is in the northern plains, in the drier regions of the Peninsular Plateau, you will find the dry deciduous. Tendu. Tendu is from which you get the tendu leaves. And tendu leaves are used for what? Tendu leaves, they are picked in the wild, and then the dried tendu leaves are picked from the wild, and they are used for manufacturing of bidis, right? The bidis for the local cigarettes that you have, the smoking, for smoking purposes. So that is what the tendu leaves are for. Okay, so then red sanders, again, significantly the population has reduced over past some time. Red sanders is traditionally to be found in the region of Andhra Pradesh, around the Sheshachalam area. That is where you have the red sanders, and it is again in much demand across the eastern part of Asia, because the wood has got certain for example, it is has got acoustic properties where it is used for acoustic instrument making, decorative purposes, and also it is said to have got some medicinal properties. That is why it is very much smuggled across the region of Eastern Asia. And you would have seen the movie as well. And after the movie, I'm sure, whether you know about any other tree or not, you would have known about the red sanders. So that is basically red sanders, then palas, amalthas, bale, khair, axlewood. That is a dry deciduous forest. Then after this, you have the tropical thorn forest. Now, this is in much drier areas. So, areas of Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh, that is where you will find the tropical thorn forest. So, there the rainfall around 40 to 60 centimeter, on an average 50 centimeter, you will have lesser amount of leaves. So, babool, bear, wild dead palm, khair, neem, khejri, palas. So, palas, khair, bale, you will find here also, you will find here as well. So, what does that tell you? It tells you that it is not as if suddenly the species will change. In the interconvening areas, you will have certain species which can tolerate even thorny conditions or very less rainfall or slightly more rainfall as well. So the trees also have an operational range which they basically are able to withstand. Okay, now that is the aspect. Now after that, you have the montane forest to be found in the mountainous areas. Now as you move higher up across the mountains, as you move higher up, so the temperature reduces, rainfall also in majority of the case reduces itself. So rains vary. So the types of trees also are different. In the lower stretches around the foothills, you will find in many of the cases tropical deciduous, evergreen kind of forest as well in certain areas. Then as you move slightly higher up, temperate, wet temperate kind of deciduous forest you will find, broadleafed. Higher up, grasslands, coniferous, before the grasslands, conifers. For example, you will find cheer pines, right, which have needle shaped leaves, which are there to withstand snowy conditions. Further higher up, grasslands. Further higher up, mosses, lichens. Further higher up, nothing out there, only snow and ice. Okay, so it has got varied successive vegetation from the tropical to the tundra. So foothills of Himalayas, deciduous forest. move to a certain height, wet temperate type of forest. Then hill ranges of northeast India, hilly areas of West Bengal and Uttarakhand. There you will even find evergreen broadleaf forest. So oak, chestnut, rhododendron, all of these are to be found in these areas. Okay, so oak, chestnut, rhododendron, all of them you will find there. Then higher up, cheer pine, chinar, deodar, walnut. Now deodar is, this is the deodar tree. This is where you have a lot of commercial utility. This is also utilized for furniture making. But the other ones that you see, they are conifers broadly, and they are the ones which are typically utilized and used for the purpose of, let's suppose, you have biofuel. So many of these needle shaped leaves and these conifers, they will secrete some amount of oil, and that oil can be utilized for manufacturing of biofuel as well. And it is these conifers which catch fire easily as well if the conditions are very dry. So the forest fires are also very prominent because of that oil which is secreted. Further higher up that you go, temperate grasslands. Example of temperate grassland that we studied yesterday. All right. Yes, yesterday or day before yesterday, we studied the temperate grasslands which get created. Bugyals. Very good. So bugyals can get created. Further higher up that you go, alpine forest, pastures, tundra vegetation, that is mosses and lichens, the tundra climate that we studied under Köppen. But when we talk about the southern mountains, in the southern mountains, the temperature is comparatively higher as compared to the northern mountains because we are at a lower latitude, closer to equator. And also, the availability of rainfall is different. So that is why in the southern mountain system, the temperature is higher. So you don't find the same range or the variation of forest. Here you will find a very unique form of wet temperate forest in the region of Tamil Nadu, some parts of Karnataka and Kerala, along the Nilgiris, the Palni, and the Anamalai hills, what is referred to as Sholai in Tamil. Okay, this is a term which is in Tamil, that is Sholai. And from here, you have the term Sholas. So the Shola vegetation is very typical of the Nilgiris. And furthermore, if ever you visit the region around Munnar or around Ooty and any of the areas around these Nilgiris, you will find a lot of Chikmagalur, for example, you will find very lush green Shola vegetation. Okay. So you have magnolia, laurel, chincona, wattle. These are your examples. Then you have the littoral and swamp forest. Example, you have mangroves. Amazon is something that we have studied earlier. There you have in Amazon what kind of forest we have studied under Köppen classification. What kind of forest do you find in the region of Amazon? Very good. Evergreen. Evergreen vegetation, what is also the tropical or equatorial rainforest, right? Very good. So here, example is mangrove. Now, the regions where you will observe this. In Congo Basin also you have tropical evergreen. So regions across the coastline, then across the areas of the islands, inland lakes, and reservoirs. So, example, even around Vuller Lake in Jammu Kashmir, you will find this kind of a forest. So, around the region of Jammu Kashmir, around the region of Rajasthan, around Sambar Lake, around the Great Run of Kutch, around Sundarbans is an example, right? Odisha, Chilika Lake, Kerala coastline, and all these areas, you will find many of these. Hirakud Dam also, large dams also there, also in the vicinity. Wherever you have swampy conditions, the soil is moist. Under those conditions, the mangroves will particularly thrive and they will grow. So they can have a classification as a beach forest, tidal forest, freshwater swamp forest is the one that you find across lakes, and reservoirs. Yes, in some parts of the Tarai, but mostly in Tarai, you will find the deciduous forest because of abundance of moisture, reservoirs. Okay. Saturday we have map class. This Saturday mostly that will be a compensation for the 14th of August, the cancelled class which was there because of health reasons. I had to cancel that. So we will have a kind of a compensatory class for that. We'll try to complete the mapping there itself. If it becomes too long a session, then we will do one thing. We'll switch over the mapping to some other day where we will have a dedicated session only for map, where we will be talking about the world map and India map in detail. Okay, I will give you more of an approach. We'll try to finish it this Saturday itself. If it doesn't allow, then we will think about it. Okay, don't worry about it. Now, then comes the portion which is asked in the mains and prelims examination repeatedly, and that is the status of forest in India. Now, as per our National Forest Policy of 1988, the aim has been to increase the forest cover to around 33% of the geographical area of the country. Increase the forest cover to around 33% of the geographical area of the country. That is the aim the as per the National Forest Policy. So here, the India State of Forest Report is published by the Forest Survey of India, which has been mandated. So this is something which is relevant fact for your prelims. Okay. So has been mandated to assess the forest and the forest resources of the country. So since 1987, 17 assessment reports have been completed. Now this is a biennial exercise. Okay. It is a biennial cycle. That means every 2 years. Every 2 years. Okay. Every 2 years it is published. Now this gives you an idea about what is the amount of very dense forest, what is the coverage of moderately dense forest, what is the coverage of open forest, what is the coverage of tree cover. Now, in 2021, you had the 17th report of the series, which was published in the January of 2022. So that is why the next report is supposed to come out later this year or first half of next year. I will tell you what to observe in that report. I will tell you what to extract when the report is published. But the latest report is the one which will be published later this year or early next year. Please adhere or attest to that report. Whenever the report comes out, I'll try to have a separate session, particularly for that report, maybe on YouTube if possible. But then try to attest to that report. Try to stick to that report, which is going to be very relevant for next year's prelims and next year's mains as well. Okay. Now, here you will observe this is the report of 2019, just to show you the trend. So here you have very dense forest coverage, moderately dense forest coverage, open forest, that gives you the total forest cover, and then you have the tree cover, right? So what is the difference between a forest cover and a tree cover? Last report was in 2021, Vivek. So what is the difference between a forest cover and tree cover? Are we aware of that? When it is published, it will be all over the region of current affairs. Okay. So when you have trees in a particular area, let's suppose in whichever city that you are in, if you have trees, now there will be certain parks where you will have trees, certain regions where you only have trees or vegetation. Will you call them as forest? No. So a region where you have the presence of vegetation for larger than 1 hectare, that is the criteria. The size should be larger than 1 hectare for it to be considered as forest. Then it is notified by the state as well. So if you have the trees or vegetation in an area less than 1 hectare, you don't consider it as a forest. You consider it as a tree cover. So 1 hectare is that, yes, forest, mangroves also cover the forests. So that 1 hectare where you should have the canopy density greater than 10%. Canopy cover to be greater than 10%. Okay, because if the canopy cover is less than 10%, it will be classified into a kind of a scrub. So that canopy cover, that in a particular land area, when viewed from above, what is the overall canopy cover? That provides you with the classification of the type of forest. So, for example, you have the very dense forest, wherever you have a canopy density of a region to be 70% or more. So, what is that canopy density? No, Miyawaki forest, the urban forest that generally it is referred to, it won't be classified under the traditional, it will be classified under tree cover. Saturday, at what time we have the extra class, I will inform you tomorrow. Don't worry. Okay. Canopy is the foliage. This, if this is the tree, this is the canopy. This is what is canopy. Okay. So if let's suppose this is an area larger than 1 hectare. Now, when viewed from above, it is the canopy which will be visible to you. It will be the canopy which will be available in terms of the visual perspective. So if in a region there more than 70% of the area is occupied by the canopy cover, so that means the density of trees in that region is very high. So that means it will be regarded as a very dense forest. Overall, even though India's forest cover has been increasing, if you analyze the trend over the past couple of decades, the region under very dense forest has reduced. Even though, as compared to the 2019 report, the 2021 report has indicated a slight increase in the very dense vegetation. But if you consider a trend over 20-year period, the very dense vegetation, that is the region with canopy cover of more than 70%, that has reduced. Then canopy cover of 40 to 70%, moderately dense. Canopy cover of 10 to 40, open forest. And then if the canopy cover less than 10%, it is a scrub land. It is not considered to be a forest anymore. So in terms of area, the list of 5 states in terms of the largest area covered by forest: Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Maharashtra. This is relevant for prelims. Okay. Now, then this is in terms of absolute area. Okay. But if you consider the percentage of the state which is covered by forest, or whatever might be the area of the state, what is the percentage of area of that state which is forested? Then all the northeastern states you will find, in Mizoram, you have 84% of the land area which is forested. Arunachal, 79% of the area which is forested. Meghalaya, 76, Manipur, and Nagaland. So these are the forested areas in terms of the percentage of land. And the sad part is that this is the stretch of the country which is experiencing the heaviest rate of deforestation out there. The rate of deforestation is simply unparalleled in this particular part of the country. So that is again a sad part of it. And that is why the climate in this region is changing. The amount of landslides which are happening, the disasters which are occurring, that is also changing. And it is happening because of various reasons. In many of the areas, it is a connivance between the administrative officials, the in many of the cases, even IS officers out there, the forest officers out there, they have a connivance with the private parties. And the plywood manufacturing that you come across, all the beautiful and glorious ads that you have of the plywoods, many of these plywood companies have made a fortune out of the illegal deforestation carried out in the forests of these areas. But that is the sad reality. So, yes, this is also relevant for your prelims. Okay. Now, these are the important implications of the modern report. So basically, total forest and tree cover of the country is 80.9 million hectares, which is 24.62% of the geographical area. As per the 2019 report, what was the total percentage? 24.56 total forest plus tree coverage. As of 2021, it is 24.62. So there is a minor increase. As compared to the assessment of 2019, there is an increase of 2000 square kilometer of the forest. Now, most of the increase is somewhere around the stretches of open forest. Very dense forest has also increased. Tree cover has increased by 721 square kilometer as compared to the last report. So this is in comparison to the last report. To last report. Then forest cover has increased. 5 states with the largest increase in forest area, where the amount of forest area has increased. Basically, you have Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Odisha, Karnataka, and Jharkhand. Okay. Deforestation, is it carried out for settlement building? Yes. For settlement building, also for agriculture, extension of agriculture. Right. And then the total mangrove cover in the country has increased by 17 square kilometer. Bamboo forest have shown a remarkable increase. The area under very dense forest has indicated an increase by around 500 square kilometer. But again, I will repeat, as compared to 2019, it has increased by around 500 square kilometer. But as compared over a, let's say, a larger period of the 2 decades, there has been a decrease in very dense forest. There has been an increase in open forest. 17 states and union territories have covered their goal, achieved their goal of 33% area under forest and tree. The rest have to cover this. Okay. Now let us take a couple of questions, the PYQs which have appeared from this area. In India, in which of the following types of forest is teak a kind of a dominant tree species? Teak is found in which of these? Yes, correct, Dinesh. Karthik, Ayush, Vivek, Manam, good. Sayyid, all of you, correct. I expect anyone who is attentive in the session to get this correct. No. Good. Majority of you have given the correct answer. Tropical moist deciduous forest, that is where teak, sal, shisham, sandalwood, mahua, these are the moist deciduous. Now, which one of the following regions of India has a combination of mangrove forest, evergreen forest, and deciduous forest? All of them to be found. Anushka, Tarun, Usna, Sayed, correct. Anushka, did you go through this question earlier itself? Because I found that before moving into the slide, you had the answer. In either case, it works as long as you are correct. Yes. Good. So all these types you will find in the region of Andaman, Nicobar. In the north coastal Andhra Pradesh, you will not find evergreen, right? Then in the southwestern Bengal, you will southwestern Bengal, right? That is around the region of Odisha, around the region of Jharkhand border. You will not find evergreen there as well. In south coastal Saurashtra also, you will not find evergreen. It is in Andaman Nicobar where all of them will be found. I'll show you the leaderboard very quickly. Okay, this is the leaderboard. Most of you have got all the questions correct. Okay, so that is where we'll restrict the session here today. We will convene tomorrow again, and tomorrow we will initiate the discussion of soil, the associated problems, and we will also enter into the portion of agriculture. Okay, very important topic for the UPSC nowadays because of the various agricultural crises that we face. So we will talk about the portion of agriculture tomorrow. So I hope today's session was helpful and meaningful to all of you guys, and I hope that you extract something out of it. Again, hearty congratulations to all of you for being a witness to one of the most historic moments modern India has basically faced. So, something that we'll talk about for ages. So, let's have a few questions and then we will continue tomorrow. Uh, I'm full-time aspirant, but I'm unable to manage my time well. So, there I would suggest have a very simple suggestion. Rather than having a long target, have a 2 to 3 day target. That what is it that you are going to achieve in the next 2 to 3 days. So forget everything else. Try to achieve that once you achieve that, you will get that discipline for the next day. Try doing this for 14 to 21 days. That is when you will inculcate a habit. Okay, do that. Try doing that. I mean, how Mosindram got wettest place than Cherrapunji. So it is very close by, and even Cherrapunji, it is not as if it receives significantly less rainfall as compared to Mosindram. But then, obviously, the rainfall induced by the Khasi region, Garo Khasi Jaintia region, so that pattern has changed because of the amount of vegetation in that region. Cherrapunji has reduced because in Cherrapunji, you also have a problem where there's a significant loss of topsoil because of substantial amount of rainfall. A lot of topsoil is drained, so also areas under vegetation has reduced. Okay. Aman, uh, keep the ARMs for revision in that case. Okay, keep the ARMs for revision. See, many of you are basically having to take care of multiple responsibilities at the same time. Only one advice from my side, if you can take it, and that is that try to have a minimum utilization of current affairs, and whichever GS topic you are attending in the class, the revision of that, just ensure that portion. Okay, the basic of that portion. Capitalize on the holidays and the weekends. That is something you need to do. Okay, and for any optional, you will require around 4 to 6 months. Any optional, 4 to 5 months is something which is required. Akshita, that is something you can inculcate even in your answer writing and your note making, the diagrams. Are you in class? Roshan, obviously, I was not a part of the Chandrayaan mission, so I have to remain in class. Where else would I be? I want to be on the moon, but I can't. If that was your question, what is a good score out of 15-mark questions in mains? Around 7.5 to 8. Where to check the syllabus for optional? You Nagentran, you will get in the notification. Notification. Please go through the notification once, all of you. Shrayesh, the content slightly gets modified over uh, the different batches as and when the relevant topics come into place. Slightly overall, but the crux is similar. Will you give an attempt to UPSC this time? No, absolutely not. So I'm not attempting UPSC or any of these exams anymore. So yeah. So all those experiences I have gained, the exams I have cleared, that is more than sufficient. about the sequence in which we should cover the recording of live class. Then you should go for the tablet lectures. So along with the live class, go for the ARMs, the recordings of the live class and the ARMs. Once you have completed all of them, then revise. The second phase of revision should be carried out with the tablet, and the subjective test you can take at any point wherever you feel confident. Yes, we do offer many of the optional papers and the subject course for that. How river originates from peninsular region, because of high amount of water concentration in an area, due to which is supported by rainfall, which is also supported in certain areas. Let's suppose the groundwater is very abundant in a region, so it will start percolating as a kind of an underground stream, etc. And no new good newspaper are found in your area, look at online newspapers. Okay. I'm still reading now NCRT when I want to study standard books and optional subject, but I want to attempt in 2024. Cover the NCRTs multiple times, Charan. More than sufficient. And start attempting the multiple choice questions. You will come across your own fallacies, which are your own lacunae, where you have to improve. So obviously you will. So, but for the successful attempt, you need to start the portion of optional as soon as possible. Okay. Saurabh, it is up to you, my dear friend. It is your own choice. So the online sessions give you with a kind of a discipline. But if you have that discipline in the case of the BTLP as well, it is up to you. Whichever, Vinotini, either the Hindu or the Indian Express, whichever you are comfortable. Don't get that feeling of fear of missing. That FOMO feeling should not be there. Whichever newspaper you are comfortable with, stick to that. Okay. So we'll discuss the revision strategy at last, and there will be a morning batch of geography as well at later point of time, somewhere in November. So no, getting 7 marks out of 15 is not an average. You are definitely above average. So maximum marks you will get is around 7.5 to 8, right? You won't get around 15 out of 15, or even 12 out of 15 you won't get. Even 10 out of 15 is very rare in one or the odd answers out of everyone. So 7 out of 15 is going to be very nice. Yes, Nagentran, start reading newspapers as early. Okay. Roshan, if you are appearing for the exam in 2025, you can start your optional next year as well. After you have covered the GS, you have some clue about how to proceed with which portion of optional, then also you can start. Yes, it is good, Sayed. So that is all from my side here, guys. We meet again tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Goodbye. Thank you for all the patience and the kind words. Good night.